All right, here we go. So fucking tired.
Welcome back to the comments section. I'm Brett Cooper. Last week...
Oh yeah, I'm level 10 now, nigga.
Good to identify what intelligence means to everybody.
I think intelligence is better defined as your adaptability and your problem-solving skills more than it is your education. Obviously, like the education, the stuff you've been through, puts a lot into play in it because it gives you more resources, more thoughts to draw from. The formal education definitely helps, but I don't think it's in any way essential.
This guy gets
No.
it. I love that he said it's adaptability and problem solving, because that truly
That
will
is
take
like
you farther in
actually
life
what
than what you learn by
an
taking
IQ
tests while you're getting
too.
your bachelor's degree. Like, I promise you, memorizing things in high school, like, it's good to learn about history, it's good to learn about
Like,
the
it's
world.
like a lot of
Memorizing
problem
facts
solving.
and numbers, that does not get you as far as truly being a creative thinker, being a problem solver, being able to be resilient and flexible in the workplace, just in your normal life. He's absolutely right on that. Those soft skills that people often look over in school, that is how you get ahead. That is how you can go into a job where you have no idea what you're doing and still succeed. You can go into a room where you don't know anybody, you can still network, you can command a space. Those are things that the formal education system does not teach you. They're incredibly, incredibly important, and I do believe that they are part of intelligence.
So what is the most essential?
So the most essential thing is
Throwing
probably
an eye.
common sense.
Yeah, so for me personally, I think intelligence is both EQ, IQ, and that common sense, street smart intelligence, all of that combined.
People consciously or unconsciously, when they see someone, form an opinion immediately. Like, I'm sure we all did right away.
When I saw you, I told myself, Maria, do not judge him just by his looks. He could be throwing you off, or
Who is she
that's just
talking
who
about?
he is, but he can talk the talk and walk the walk. Sean, I didn't want to judge him based on the way
He's
he
gonna
looks
get
or
really
dresses or
low
acts, so I was like,
IQ.
I think he's intelligent.
First impressions, I would put him at the bottom.
Ha! Based.
Guy does not give a shit. Does not give a shit.
All the other people,
Ha!
like the bright neon
That was
intelligence,
funny.
they were typically
I just
the ones
said that.
were worse in classes. If we were ranking confidence, I'd definitely put Sean at very first place.
So what is the definition that we're going with is the biggest question.
I like your definition.
I know, I was gonna say, I like my definition. It
Yeah.
combines everything.
Does anyone have any like initial?
You can be honest.
Start on that side. I'm done going first.
I feel like I have a good combination of both, like book smart and street smart.
Aw,
I think I
fucking
have something like that.
cunt.
There's so many aspects to intelligence. It really goes beyond IQ and EQ. Even those two different factors don't really capture what it really means to be intelligent.
That was fucked up. I should have won that.
Angel Soft toilet paper is strong and soft every time. Angel Soft, soft and strong, simple.
Is
I
this
also
guy
think
going into there?
It's difficult.
Oh,
when you're
you
looking at it
fucking
in an
cunt, don't
academic
do
sense
that.
Because people look at hard science, and so, you know, this girl who's a PhD or the biotech girl, and they're like, oh yeah, they must be really, really smart, that's so hard. But I think about my brothers, like my oldest brother, he's smart like that. He went to the Air Force Academy, he's an engineer, like that's how his brain works, but he cannot write essays like I can. He does not love literature like I do. Like, he couldn't write a novel, whereas I would sob when I had to do math. But I can write a fantastic essay in an hour and a half and like win an award from a professor. And like that is my skill set. I can
Where's your
critically
what?
analyze literature, unlike he can't. Like our skill
Tape
sets
measure?
are totally different. But even as somebody who is smart in that way, I still look at my brother and I
all
go,
the
"You're
way
probably smarter
in
than me."
the
Because that's so. But that's
garage,
just
I
because
would
I think
assume?
that type
Why?
of academia is just harder than what I do. I don't. It's just
You're
interesting. 'Cause I
what?
think there are so many.
Why?
So I know what size shoes to get.
What size shoe? For what?
I'm gonna send you a Christmas present. You want?
I thought you already sent me a shoe that you wanted.
These are different ones, and they're cheaper because they're kid sizes.
Oh.
Types of intelligence
Okay.
just within the traditional IQ or
If I already
academia, and then when you
ordered
get
you a-
outside of it
sure.
with EQ and common sense, it's just there's a lot of factors. Is basically what I'm saying.
I know I'm not, from Yale. I don't have a PhD, but what I lack in those areas, I'm able to still problem solve and use my own skill set, and my emotional intelligence as well as my social intelligence.
That is very true. I feel like I did judge
Emotional
Sean a little bit
intelligence-
because
intelligence
of
isn't a
digital
fucking
marketing
thing.
and because of the clothes and the
That's for stupid
anthropology
people who
major. But
think
it is
wanna
true.
act like they're
You do
smart.
not need to have a PhD to have common sense, to have a good EQ, to have all of those other factors. So do not want to discount him totally. Because, like I said, some of the smartest people I know are people who did not go to college, who have incredible common sense, who are well-read but are not academically well-read or taught to be that kind of. Well, anyway, so yeah, I don't want to push Sean to the bottom yet.
Besides my education and background, I feel like I have high emotional intelligence, like I'm aware of my surroundings.
As a software developer, my problem-solving skills are obviously top-notch, I think I would say. My whole life, I've kind of had to fight to be seen as intelligent. I think I'm so used to having to do that as a woman, to just step up
As
and
a
be like, yeah,
woman.
I deserve to be here. My first job out of college, I was working at a law firm. Gentleman came up to me and said, "Hi, you don't look like somebody that would work at a law firm. You look like somebody I'd go on spring break with."
I will say, I hate the whole, they look at me differently because I'm a woman.
What is that?
But especially as a very sweet-looking girl who does not have, the loudest or strongest voice and being blonde, I could understand how that would be difficult for her, especially in a very male-dominated industry, like software engineering, that whole world. So I actually, I can empathize with what she's going through, because I'm sure that's difficult.
I've got at least formal education. I consider myself intelligent. My mental dedication and my ability to adapt and to problem solve. What I do in the Marine Corps, I'm a cyber defense specialist. So I think that by virtue of what I do, that already requires some amount of intelligence.
Also, the training you have to do in the military, if you're doing anything that's specialized, if you're in the Marines, if you have any, doesn't matter if he didn't go to college. He obviously is very smart. He obviously has needed to spend a considerable amount of time learning and training and, dedicating himself to this. So just because he didn't go to college does not mean that he does not have a, specified skill set or a lower IQ.
Sorry, quick question. So do you think that only certain people can do your job, or do you think anyone can do your job?
Only certain people. You have to
Yeah,
take
I was
the
gonna
ASVAB
say
before
only
you go into the
certain
military.
people
That's,
could probably
not
do
really
his
how much
job.
you know, but how well you can learn information. And I got a 94 on that. It's not an amount of how much you study.
Why does she look so bothered? She's, really? Do you think everybody? I think anybody could be I don't know if that's actually what she's thinking, but that's the vibe I'm getting from her.
She
Everybody
seems
else
like a
seems
cunt.
actually interested, especially this girl in the jeans. She's been pretty quiet, but she seems like she's just taking everything in. And this girl's, really? I'm a PhD. You're in the military?
It's not an amount of how much you study, how much you know. You're not going to really get better.
I know that this guy gets a really high score. I've seen PewDiePie react to this a long time
The
ago.
idea that you can get better at learning is a pretty big signifier of intelligence. I'm very much dyslexic. I have ADHD, and I'm on the autism spectrum. Dyslexia means that there's a big gap in comprehension. So I was scoring 99th percentile in certain areas and 3rd percentile in others. I'll never be able to learn another language. I took Spanish for 12 years. And I
Oh, motherfucker.
So I have a question. Why did you go to Yale and why did you go to Harvard?
What, it's hard?
My parents are immigrants from China, and I'm a first-generation immigrant as well, and college student as well.
I love that this guy is just the Harvard stereotype. And there's
For
no
real.
hate about it
Asian as
whatsoever.
fuck.
More power to you. I'm especially with affirmative action right now at schools like Harvard.
Damn it,
it's very
bro.
impressive that you got in because they're
I got
not letting a
fucked.
lot of Asian students in right now. But you are the stereotype.
Damn.
And I love that for you. I genuinely do. Cracks me up.
That was
I really
fucked.
stress the importance of formal education.
Obviously,
For
I'm
me,
not
that was
very
something that I
intelligent.
really strive for.
I wasn't planning to go to college. That wasn't a goal of mine. My parents were like, well, you should apply to at least one college. And I was like, I'll never get in here. and then I went to Yale.
This girl said nothing and then just came out of the gate and was like, yeah, I applied to one school, it was Yale, and I got in.
What? Wait, which girl was
I
that?
thought that she was...
Was that the one who has
You are a
autism?
stereotype, and I love that for you. I genuinely do. It cracks me up.
We always really stress the importance of formal education. For me, that was something that I really strived for.
I wasn't planning to go to college. That wasn't like a goal of mine. My parents were like, well, you should apply to at least one college. And I was like,
She applied to
"I'll get
Yale.
in here." And then I went to Yale.
This girl said nothing and then just came out of the gate and was like, yeah, I applied to one school, it was Yale, and I got in.
That is pretty crazy.
I mean, I thought that she was kind of like
Well, she is an
dark horse in the
autist.
back with the lack of speaking, the lack of apparent confidence. I was wrong.
Why is everyone removing me, bro?
Including yourself, and give reasons why you want to do what you're doing.
This really is the best part of these types of videos because I've watched a lot of these ranking videos. They're all standing there and they're, trying to be really nice. They're asking each other questions, and then the moderator is like, all right, you got to start ranking. The music ramps up. This is where it gets tense, and I really love it because they're kind of, dilly-dallying. We love everybody's so smart. Get down to it. I want the drama.
I gotta go 1.
No.
Oh yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Aw, what?
You prick. Just because you disagreed with one thing he said, you're putting him at the bottom.
What did he say that
This
you
man is a
disagreed
Marine
with?
because he only went to high school. There is nothing creative about your ranking. You picked the person who also went to an elite school. You picked the PhD. You put the software
sweet. I'm actually
developer
set up pretty
lower.
fucking good on
The
this
only reason
one.
I can think of is because she's like a sweet blonde girl. Maybe she went to Ohio University instead of Yale. I don't know. This girl is rubbing me the wrong way right now.
I would rank you as a 6, not meaning that you're not intelligent. I also think that I don't place a lot of value on the military.
Yeah, cringe, bro. Alright, let's see. Yeah, I figured I wasn't gonna get that. I shouldn't have even tried. Attack phase. Let's go. Boom. Boom. Boom.
When you write, your tone influences how readers respond. With Grammarly, just highlight your text and type how you want to sound.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
So it's incredibly biased. You're not actually ranking his intelligence. You just
I should have
have
picked that.
a bias about the military and people who are in the military, and you probably think that somebody who would go into the military obviously has a lower IQ, maybe doesn't have any other options. Grow up, please. This man is serving our country. He gave up his freedom to work 4 hours.
Yeah, these people seem like
He's
cunts.
in a specialized role that he has had
At
to
least
train
these
for. He had
women.
to take tests to be
The
able to do that,
Asian
to
dude
train to
seems
be able to
pretty
do that.
chill.
And you're ranking him 6th on the intelligence scale because you're really not fond of the military. Great.
Dumb cunt.
We're doing really well.
Period.
No, full stop.
Okay, now the other people snickering. Sean, Maria. Out. Pissing me off.
I'd probably do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Bro, is everyone rating him?
Does anyone think they're like either end of the spectrum?
I'd say I'm 1, if nothing else, because I know what I'm about and I'm sure of that.
Okay, I really do like this guy, but just because you're sure of yourself does not mean that you are the most intelligent. Well, I mean, I guess he's saying that he believes he is the most intelligent, and he's sure of himself that he is the most intelligent, but just the way that he phrased that cracked me up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The people who were disliking him and putting him at the bottom, he showed some respect, put them where he thought they should be. I'm pettier. I might have been like 6. Bottom.
I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh.
Bro, why is everyone picking him at the bottom?
It's hard for me to look past the education part.
This basically sums up this
I
entire
fucking
episode. It is hard for me to
these
look
people.
past the education part. That is what we need to move past in this country. The education
Yeah, no,
system has a
dog.
hold
Don't-
on us.
no,
From
dog,
K through
don't be
12
going to fucking
higher
school.
education. This formal education system has literally indoctrinated people. And I'm not even talking about politics here. I'm talking about indoctrinating you into believing that this system is the only way to be intelligent. That the only way to gain intelligence, to have a good career, to go to the right school, is to be in a public school where government-funded teachers are just speaking in front of your kids for 8 hours a day, not actually teaching them any problem-solving skills or soft skills or emotional EQ, anything like that, just being talked at, like, we have been lied to. We've been convinced that that is the best way to go about education, and that anything outside of that, oh, that's scary. Oh, the government needs to get involved and stop parents from doing that because that's technically abuse. Speaking of Harvard, actually, it was a Harvard professor that wrote a whole piece and ran a whole seminar a couple of summers ago about how homeschooling should be banned because it's abusive to the children.
What?
Doing a non-traditional form of education is allegedly abusive according to some of these academics. Like, more and more companies are not requiring degrees anymore, and that is an excellent thing. There have been a lot of conversations about this on Twitter, actually. Jeremy Boring was tweeting a lot about it because
Don't
he's
go to
definitely
college.
against the higher education system. One of the greatest things about Daily Wire is that we do not require that you have a degree to come work with us, and I absolutely love that because Jeremy didn't go to college.
Well, yeah, I'm fairly sure that fucking Matt Walsh dropped out of high school. So,
A lot of our execs now.
actually, let me look that up. Did Matt Walsh drop out of high school? Class. One sec. Next phase. Oh, whoa, I didn't even see this. I guess I can just go like that, but here we go. And attack phase. Boom. Here we go. Yeah, my teaching my future. I don't feel like reading this whole thing, but yeah, no, I'm fairly sure that he did drop out of high school.
Not go to college, they're creative people, they're problem solvers, they do not believe that you need a degree in order to be successful, but he's been tweeting about a lot of this and how to get rid of the higher education system, how to totally dismantle it. And my personal opinion is that we need to get rid of government subsidized loans. Literally subsidized loans.
No,
grad
for
programs.
sure.
Because now colleges can just hike up all their prices, they can create as many ridiculous programs as possible, and then they convince these young people that they need this in order to get a job. They don't. Newsflash, you don't. Then you go into debt for this. You owe the government $30,000, $50,000. You're stunted. With an anthropology degree? Sorry, I had to rant about that. So freaking dumb. Another company that shares these values is Good Ranchers, because they also value hard work and the result more than just a piece of paper, just like they value the quality of their steak versus making a cheap buck by importing all their steak from overseas. Now, there is a lot at stake. This values, they're incredible. You will love their products and you will love them too. Again, that is promo code Cooper at goodranchers.com.
Going to college, I think you learn a lot, if nothing else emotionally, but I still think you're smart.
You learn emotionally by being in a sorority and partying.
I mean, you probably do learn a little bit, but like you mainly just get indoctrinated. Oh man.
I can just girl talk.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh.
You guys okay out here?
Oh, you
Hey, mama. Yeah, we're like that.
Was it too
Yes,
hard?
and-
I learned better life skills being homeschooled and going to volunteer groups and having a diverse friend group because my extracurriculars were not just in my school district at my school and being very socially diverse than I did in college. Like, hand to God, you do not need college in order to be socialized. You do not need public school to be socialized. That is another lie that we have been told.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 immigrant parents, first generation.
What the
going to
fuck?
college,
I mean, he
humble
probably
mom.
is gonna be
2,
one just
me,
because he's Asian.
PhD, cancer biology.
Me, PhD.
What a dumb
Maria.
bitch.
Scientist. I work in a biotech company. We make
She's gonna be
programs,
like
stuff
super low,
like that.
I bet.
And then 6. It has nothing to do with your background.
I hate all these people now, guys. I'm so bitter. The rest of this episode is just going to be me being petty. So prepare yourself for that. I'm going to whine a bunch.
I don't think you really have the highest EQ out of all of us. Tyler.
I like
ranked
how she
last
just
for me
keeps
personally
saying
because
things
the
about
way he carries
EQ, then
himself,
that's
he
what's
was
gonna
ranking intelligence
be the
based
big
on
decider.
his point of view and not
When
taking
EQ doesn't
other
matter
people's
at all.
You are ranking intelligence based on your point
Bro,
of view.
be autistic.
Everybody
It's
views
way
the world
cooler
based
than
on their
having
biases and their
a high
points of views.
EQ, huh,
I'm
bro?
viewing intelligence based on my POV.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't
he
care
was,
about
he had a different
emotions.
point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah, your point of view about intelligence is that
Don't
you have
care
to have
about
a
other
PhD,
people's
or go to
emotions,
Harvard,
bro.
or go to
Be
Yale,
autistic.
Be the son of immigrants.
It's way cooler.
That's your point of view.
It's
That's not
based,
a logical reason
bro.
to rank him lower. I do get the EQ part, but I think that's a cop-out. I really do. I look at this guy, Tyler, and I just see like a military guy. Like stoic, serious. He's a Marine. Like, I don't know how he is in his personal life. We're just seeing one side of him where he is being filmed and has a bunch of academics shitting on him. I don't think that's a great way to evaluate somebody's emotional, intelligence.
Really just came down to his body language, his demeanor, the way he carried himself, the way he
Like the
acted.
dude?
I would put
I guess that there's two dudes, but this person is fucking weird.
3, 4, 5, and out.
Oh!
So
At least
those are
that
my
person's
picks.
cool.
You are number 1.
Pick
And
so that
I
they.
think you have the highest, not only EQ score out of everybody, but the way you present
Is that a tranny? Or is that just a real weird looking dude?
yourself, as well as being a PhD student, I think is just like
Like
The
a fucking
girl
faggot or something.
That is like semi-narcissistic and like all about herself has the highest EQ. We need to fix what we value as a society in terms of emotional intelligence, I guess.
Then I put myself 6 because I feel like I might be the weakest in terms of actual IQ score. Hopefully, I can make it up to everything else. So I did put
1, 2.
myself as least intelligent. However, if it can't be me, I definitely think Tyler,
3.
fortunately, his way of thinking is linear. And
Oh
I
my
think
goodness.
Intelligence is almost like a sphere. It's a picture. And right now he's only coloring with one color than, with the rainbow.
What a faggot.
But also, like you basically just argued, intelligence can be a sphere, can be all the colors on the rainbow. So just because he thinks about it in one way doesn't necessarily mean that he is not as intelligent. Just because he has one view of intelligence doesn't mean that he's not as intelligent. You literally just said yourself that it's a sphere, the rainbow. I don't know. But I do like that Sean put himself last, not because I think that he's dumb, but my heart goes out to Tyler, and so I'm like, I know that you're smart. I know that you're not last. But the fact that the dance and anthropology major
Bro,
put
I'm
himself
fucking
last,
these
it does
niggas up.
crack me up. Maybe self-aware that in this room, I don't know. The way that this is all
What?
happening is just cracking me up.
So who got the most number 1s?
Let's see what I can deploy here. Hopefully it's not
Down?
the.
Who got the most?
Oh yeah, I can
Sean,
get
who
10.
was pretty up there,
too.
I feel like you were definitely 3, right?
Maria's like, oh, me.
Oh,
I'm
I
so
hope that
mean.
this
I'm really
person
sure. I
is-
should do an apology. I'm really sorry. Education is one of those topics that really gets me going because I feel like I'm qualified to speak on it because I literally, except going to boarding school, I had every single type of academic experience growing up, like K through 12. Went to public school, went to a private school, went to online
Oh, I thought that
school,
she was homeschooled.
Homeschooled for a bit, went to a theater school. Like
Like
I've
just
seen
homeschooled.
all of it. And I know that my non-traditional education is the reason why I'm able to do what I do today, why my social skills are how they are today, the reason why I was able to get into the college that I wanted to go to, which was a highly ranked college. And even though I'm saying you don't need to go, I personally did want to go and found a way where it was, financially responsible for me to go. But I chalk all of that up to my very non-traditional education experience and how tailored it was to me and how fantastic and how much, I loved it and I want to get back to my children.
don't get
I just
them.
fired up. Because it's the next generation. We're talking about the state of our country, the
you
state
asshole.
of our society, and we're worried about it. Like, why aren't
And
we
they're gonna
focused
go
on
and try to
education?
get
Why aren't we
me.
focused on school choice and totally dismantling this absolutely terrible,
No,
terrible
fuck
government
you.
institution that is ruining the futures of these young people? If we want a future for our country and our society and Western civilization, we need to focus on young people and we need to focus on education.
gonna
We
dep-
modeled
what?
our education system based on the prison system. Do you think that that's going to be
20
effective?
troops?
No.
What the fuck?
And we've taught young people now this lie about higher education that they need it, that they need to go into $50,000 worth of debt in order to get a piece of paper so they can, hopefully get a job. Anyway, that's why I'm being petty and making fun of these people.
I think that
This person's
sort of
being a real
expected
cunt
to be ranked
just
a
because
little
they
bit
took out
lower
that one
at
person.
first glance and first
They
interaction
got lucky,
with me.
bro.
It's hard to tell how intelligent I am. It's hard to tell how intelligent anybody is.
She really reminds me, actually, of my sorority sisters at UCLA.
No.
I was one of
What?
2 liberal arts majors.
I thought I
feel
was
like, in
doing
my
so
Fletch
good.
class, and
And
we
then
were
this
a
guy
very,
just had to
very
go-
small minority in the sorority as a whole. Like, these were all hard science
Oh,
majors,
yes.
brilliant
Fuck
young
yes.
women, all like doing research grants, doing fellowships in the summer, like mathematicians I can't even express. But they were all like normal sorority girls. Cheery, smiley, curls up to the nines, sparkle. You would have
No,
no
fuck
idea
you.
until
Hopefully
get to
you
know
lose
them.
everything.
So I like see them in her, and I get it. And like I said at the beginning, like I can see how people might underestimate her just because of her personality and the blondness and all of that. But it's nice that she is self-aware and doesn't seem too upset about that and knows the situation. And she does seem very confident in her intelligence, which is a very good thing. That's all you can really ask for.
Anyone upset with where they're standing?
I think it makes sense that I'm down here. Like the guy who graduated from high school and then joined the military, he probably wouldn't be like high up on there. If I was in their shoes, I definitely would have also ranked myself among the lowest.
I do feel like there might be a prejudice acting in terms of ranking you
Okay, I was thinking that.
highly, but I agree with the ranking.
Maria, oh, so do you want to move from town so I can be up?
I think you probably are the most intelligent out of all of us. I would feel weird placing you there and not acknowledging the dynamics in which we did so.
Oh, they're doing their IQ test. I appreciate that Tyler is just on his phone, or is he already done? Did he do it so fast? He's like, I'm just gonna scroll on Twitter, see what N Wokeness is posting today.
This is not just a tree. It's the wide-eyed promise of a tiny seed. It's
All
the
right,
mighty
sweet.
oak.
I got that.
But it didn't get mighty overnight. It grew ring by ring, a little each day. Repeat. And that's why we made the Mighty Oak debit card. While other cards are built for spending, ours helps your money grow with 2 of the highest APYs available. Plus, you can automatically invest your spare change and bits of your paycheck for your future. Acorns, grow your oak.
Attack phase. Bring that 9 up to there. Yeah. There we go. Sick. Sick, bro. I still probably am gonna win this now. Whew.
He's already done.
So
I
number
thought that
1
I
is
was
Raymond.
fucked
Number 2
for a second.
would be Kaylee. Number 3 will be Tyler.
I thought I was fucked for
Number
a
4
second,
would
and then I
be
just
Shada.
had
Number
to-
5 is Sean, and number 6 is Maria.
Yeah, this person doesn't even know what move to make.
We should all take a moment. Can we take a moment?
No, this person right here.
Feels good. Ah, I love the redemption arc for the blonde chick and for sweet Tyler. You show him. The dark horse is coming from behind, and then Maria. They go to test. So mean. This is like a perfect story. There was a
I would
beginning,
know what
middle, and
move to
end.
make.
There was an arc. There was a character arc.
I'd place
This is the
one
beginning
right
of
here and then
Maria's
take
villain
that.
era. Look how upset she is. Oh, she is pissed. Oh, shaking her head. Do you see that head shake?
I mean, then I would just take them in the next one, but
She's about to talk about how IQ tests don't mean anything. Guarantee. After her whole speech about how it's the IQ
Maybe they
test
can
and
give me
EQ and common sense, she's about to throw it all out the window.
I think an IQ test tests something. I don't think it's intelligence. It's definitely testing something. IQ tests are now known to be flawed
Wait.
and like based on incorrect sample sizes.
Already done.
So number
Wait,
1
wait.
is
So
Like,
after
Story
they
Girl.
found out that they
Cheery,
were
smiley,
stupid, they're like, actually,
curls up to
IQ
the
tests don't
nines,
matter.
sparkle- you would have no idea
Before they
who
were
was
like
them.
trying to
So I,
make
like,
fun of this
see
one
them
guy who was in
her, and I get
in
it. And like I
the
said at the beginning, like I can
Marines.
see
They're
how
like,
people
yeah,
might
no, we're definitely
underestimate her
way
just because of
smarter.
her personality and the blondness and all of that. But it's nice that she is self-aware and doesn't seem too upset about that and knows the situation. And she does seem very confident in her intelligence, which is a very good thing. That's all you can really ask for.
Anyone upset with where they're standing?
I think it makes sense that I'm down here. Like the guy who graduated from high school and then joined the military, he
wanna
probably
see.
wouldn't be like high up on there. If I was in their shoes, I definitely would have also ranked myself among the lowest.
I do feel like there might be a prejudice acting in terms of ranking you
Okay, I was thinking that.
highly, but I agree with the
Yeah,
ranking.
because he's Asian.
So do you want to move him down so I can be up?
I think you probably are the most intelligent out of all of us. I would feel weird placing you there and not acknowledging the dynamics in which we did so.
They're doing their IQ test. I appreciate that Tyler is just on his phone. Or is he already done? Did he do it so fast? He's like, I'm just gonna scroll on Twitter, see what N Wokeness is posting today. He's already done.
So number 1 is Raymond. Number 2 would be Kaylee. Number 3 will be
Yeah, I'm
Tyler.
fucking on this
And
one.
number 4 would be Shada. Number 5 is Sean, and number 6 is Maria.
Dude stands no chance.
No, there's no way that he can win now.
We should all take a moment. Can we take a moment? Ah, it feels good. Feels good. Ah, I love the redemption arc for the blonde chick and for sweet Tyler.
What was the ranking?
The dark horse is coming from behind, and then Maria. Like COVID tests.
Yeah,
So
bitch.
This is
You're
like
fucking
a perfect
done.
story. There was a beginning, middle, and end. There was an arc. There was a character arc. This is the beginning of
I want to see what the ranking was. I missed it.
modeled our education system based on the prison system. Do you think that that's going to be effective? No. And we've taught young people now this lie about higher education that they need it, that they need to go into $50,000 worth of debt in order to get a piece of paper so
Yeah,
they
basically
can
you're
hopefully
stupid.
get a job.
If you think that you should, and, like,
that's why I'm being
except for the
petty and
people who are
making fun of
going
these
into like
I
the.
think that I sort of expected
Like
to
Yale
be ranked
or-
a little bit lower at first glance and first interaction
yeah,
with me.
join that
It's
one.
hard to tell how intelligent I am. It's hard to tell how intelligent anybody is.
She really reminds me, actually, of my sorority sisters at UCLA. I was one of 2 liberal arts majors, I feel like, in my pledge class, and we were a very, very small minority in the sorority as a whole. Like, these were all
What
hard
liberal art
science majors,
did she go
brilliant young women, all like doing research grants, doing fellowships in the summer, like mathematicians. I can't even express, but they were all like normal sorority girls, cheery, smiley, curls up to the nines, sparkle. You would have no idea until you get to know them. So I like see them in her, and I get it. And like I said at the beginning, like I can see how people might underestimate her just because of her personality and the blondness and all of that. But it's nice that she is self-aware and doesn't seem too upset about that and knows the situation. And she does seem very confident in her intelligence, which is a very good thing. That's all you can really ask for.
Anyone upset with where they're standing?
I think it makes sense that I'm down here. Like the guy who graduated from high school and then joined the military, he probably wouldn't be like high up on there. If I was in their shoes, I definitely would have also ranked myself among the lowest.
I do feel like there might be a prejudice acting in terms of ranking you
Okay, I was thinking that.
highly, but I agree with the ranking.
Maria, oh, so do you want to move him down so I can be up?
I think you probably are the most
I'm gonna take
intelligent
this
out of all
one.
of us. I would
Oh,
feel
no, there's a
weird
5 in
placing
there.
you there and not acknowledging the dynamics in which we did so.
Now they're doing their IQ test. I appreciate that Tyler is just on his phone. Or is he already done? Did he do it so fast? He's like, I'm just gonna scroll on Twitter, see what N
What
Wokeness
move
is
should I
posting
make
today.
here?
He's already done.
So number 1 is Raymond. Number 2 would be Kaylee.
I
Number
got it.
3 will be Tyler. And number 4 would be Shada. Number 5 is Sean, and number 6 is Maria.
We should all take a moment. Can we take a moment? Ah, it feels good. Feels good. Ah, I love the redemption arc for the blonde
so he
chick
was
and for sweet
3.
Tyler. You show him. The dark horse is coming from behind, and then Maria. Make COVID tests. I'm so mean. This is like a perfect story.
Aw,
There was
what?
a beginning, middle, and
Fuck
end.
me.
There was an arc. There was a character arc. This is the beginning of Maria's
Fuck
villain
me,
era. Look how
what?
upset she is.
That was so
she
fucking
is
stupid.
pissed. Oh, shaking her head. Do you see that head shake? She's about to talk about how IQ tests don't mean anything. Guarantee. After her whole speech about how it's the IQ tests and EQ and common sense, She's about to throw it all out the window.
I think an IQ test tests something.
Bro,
I don't
she had
think
to
it's
have watched
intelligence.
this.
It's definitely testing something. IQ tests are now known to be flawed and like based on incorrect sample sizes. I have really severe dyslexia. There's 2 questions on that test that I automatically basically can't answer.
I'm sure if you studied for an IQ
Like
test,
what?
you would do a lot better. IQ tests are just one aspect or one way to measure intelligence.
Coming back to intelligence, it's not just your IQ, it's your EQ,
Wait, was this?
it's your common
Wait,
sense.
wait,
it's-
wait, wait. I have to go back. Oh, the one bitch. It's all the way at. The one who is acting like she was so fucking smart is all the way at the bottom.
Unlock
That's
hundreds of deals on
hilarious.
Safeway for you.
She was
Sign up
acting like a
today.
real cunt too about it.
How to get the most of Grammarly free.
It's Kayla. On behalf of
She's like,
Grammarly,
yeah,
to
no,
tell
I
you
got
all
all
about
this
the free
stuff.
version of the
And then
best
turns out that she's
communication
the
assistant in
dumbest.
the world. Millions have chosen to go beyond their default grammar check.
Or is he already done? Did he do it so fast? He's like, I'm just gonna scroll on Twitter, see what N Wokeness is posting today. He's already done.
So number 1 is Raymond. Number 2 would be Kaylee. Number 3 will be Tyler. And number 4 would be Shada. Number 5 is Sean. And number 6 is Maria.
Actually, they all had pretty, like, fairly decent IQs.
in which we
though.
did so. While they're doing their IQ test. I appreciate that
So
Tyler is just
isn't
on his phone. Or
100,
is he already
like-
done? Did he do it so fast?
Like
He's I'm just
normal?
gonna scroll on Twitter, see what N Wokeness is posting today. He's already done.
So number
I think
1
that's
is
average.
Raymond. Number
Or-
2 would
Or maybe
be
it's 110
Kaylee.
that's average.
Number 3 will be Tyler. And number 4 would be Shada. Number 5 is Sean. And number 6 is Maria.
Yeah, so 112. Isn't Genius 145? Or what is Genius? What's the average IQ? 185 through 115. Overall, 9 people score below 130. What IQ is Genius?
According to
145,
Pinkvilla,
yeah,
those with a
okay.
145 to 154 score would be considered geniuses at the collegiate level. A person with a
That was right.
155 to 164
Can we
IQ
take a
score is
moment?
on par with Nobel Prize winners. High genius is
I
defined
love
as a
the
score
redemption
between
arc for the
165
blonde
and
chick, and for sweet
179,
Tyler,
while the ultimate
you show
genius
him.
has a
The
score
dark
between
horse is coming
180
from
and
behind,
200.
and then Maria. Make COVID tests. I'm so mean. This
End
is like
attack
a perfect
phase.
story. There was
Boom.
a beginning, middle, and end. There was an arc. There was a character arc. This is the beginning of Maria's villain era. Look how upset she is. Oh, she is
Bro,
pissed.
she
Oh,
is
shaking her head.
pissed.
Do you see that head
She's
shake?
like, oh.
She's about to talk about how IQ tests don't mean anything. Guarantee. After her whole speech about how it's the IQ test and EQ and common sense, she's about to throw it all out the window.
I think an IQ test tests something. I don't think it's intelligence. It's definitely testing something. IQ tests are now known to be.
Let's watch this.
Lately, one way I've been able to help keep my mental health a priority has been through therapy using BetterHelp. After graduating college and now being a young adult, therapy is so beneficial.
Ben Shapiro shreds Candace Owens over her take about a polarizing political issue, and Candace Owens claps back with a Bible verse? This is crazy. The infighting.
I love how she was
the
just like, you
conservative
can't
arm
put
of the
money
internet
over God.
Is chef's kiss. It's amazing. I love it. Okay.
Or
I
it
love
was,
it.
you can't serve
Yesterday,
money
this
and
went
God.
viral, and it says Ben Shapiro,
Which is funny
slams
because he's Jewish.
Candace Owens. He shreds her because she's had some awful takes. Now, historically, and Candace Owens is one of the few people that was like engaging Kanye and his delusion with his anti-Semitism and wanted to have him come on. They shut that down. And so I'm curious if they're going to part ways after this. But let's play this first clip of her, of him just kind of just shredding her.
Yes, the question is about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this is disgraceful. Without a doubt, Candace Owens.
Can't really hear what he's saying.
So
that
he said, I
much.
believe her behavior
Oh,
has
good.
been disgraceful.
Yeah, and she still works for my company.
She still works for my company. Her behavior is disgraceful, and she still works for my company.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good that he
She's been absolutely disgraceful.
is still hiring,
I think
like
that
still has her working for him.
sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication.
Her faux sophistication.
What is that? That's a big word. What is that?
Faux, like fake, like
Oh.
faux
Yeah.
weapon.
Oh, faux sophistication.
He's
Faux
saying that she
sophistication
acts
because
like
act
she
knows what she's
knows what
What's
she's
going
talking
on?
about, but she
is
doesn't.
Hamas really a terrorist group? Are they really using human shields? Or why do the Jews really run the world if they're an oppressed group? I'm just asking questions. That lady's face right
Dude.
there.
Look at that. That lady is the comment section when they see this go. Look.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I love it. I love everything about this. I love everything about this, and I'll tell you why in a moment, okay?
It's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's
No,
saying,
you
and I'm not
bitch!
What set this off? Okay, because something set this off. This isn't unprovoked. This is a clip she did, but there was a worse clip than this. Pull this clip. I'll play this.
I'm here today to endorse Nikki Haley for president of Israel. I think she's earned that.
Oh.
I think Bibi Netanyahu.
I thought that she was saying that she was going to endorse Nikki Haley. I was like, what the fuck? That doesn't make any
It's a very
sense.
bad time right now. Support for Israel has virtually collapsed socially. If you're paying attention to your trends and you're paying attention to what people are watching, you're paying attention to the protests. And the one person that I think is capable of getting it back is Nikki Haley with enough
Nikki Haley
money
is running for the
from
Republican
foreign
Party, so she's trolling. This clip right here is by far the most egregious in this entire conversation. This is really bad. So she has on an Israeli.
My grandfather grew up in a segregated South, and when they say these are the Muslim quarters, this is where the Muslims are
Right.
allowed to live, that doesn't feel like a bastion of freedom to me.
Pause it, pause it, pause it, pause it, pause it, pause it, pause it. I don't know how many
Muslims are allowed
times
to
I've
live.
talked about this.
It's not how it works.
I don't know how many times I've talked about this in my own lineage and my own history, and then just going there. But it sounds like she's never been there, because he's about to completely shred her and humiliate her.
So, I guess.
Oh, I don't think it's where they're allowed to live in Jerusalem. I think it's that there's an Armenian quarter. It's not saying the Armenians can only live here. It's that there are communities, just like there's a Jewish community in Jersey here, and there's a Muslim community in here. I don't.
Bro, have you seen the walls, though?
You know.
My grandfather.
He's like, what are you talking about?
What? I don't need one, but I would like one. What the fuck?
The fact that she doesn't understand that the quarters in the old city are not segregation ghettos, that they're
That's
actually
funny, dude.
quarters of a historical old city in Jerusalem that different groups have access to. The Armenian church
Oh, I
owns
wasn't
a
listening
quarter
fully.
of the old city.
Yeah.
Where the famous
What'd you
mosque
say?
is, they have access to a quarter of the old city. The Orthodox Christians
it
and
doesn't
Catholics
matter.
share
You
a
can just
quarter
keep
of
it
the
whole.
old city, and the Jews share a quarter of the old city. So she thinks this is evidence that that they have a Muslim court, and that's the smoking gun that they have.
Oh, sick.
This segregation two-tier system, completely ignorant of just the basic bare-bone facts that I knew.
As long as I don't
a
get
decade
taken
and a half
out right
before I
here.
ever stepped foot in Israel.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So why I'm pointing all this out? Yeah, it's like the French Quarter in New Orleans, right? Why am I pointing all this out? It's like Jews in Brooklyn. Like there's pockets of Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
But the thing with Jerusalem specifically is because Jerusalem took in so many Armenians thousands of years ago, as well as after the Armenian genocide, they have their own quarter. That's what he was pointing out. There's been historically so many bad takes. But those of you guys that are conservatives that are like, now she has a bad take, you haven't been paying attention to Candace Owens, right? Or you were paying attention against extreme ideological guidelines of she could do no wrong. She's been unhinged. She's been off the rails.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I don't really
for
like
years,
a lot of things
for
that
years she's been like this.
she
But
says,
she has
but
taken so many L's.
I actually do
Her
agree with her on
strawmanning
this a little bit.
Christianity, and specifically the Protestant Reformation, saying that, so what, people weren't saved before Martin Luther? Real quote. Then bringing on her husband to debate Allie Beth Stuckey about Protestants and Catholics. Another L take. She has been on a tirade of just L take after L take after L take. So now, all of a sudden, she is she has a bad take now? She's had an amazing plethora of bad takes, right? So I just find it so interesting that people are like upset that like because she's anti-Israel, this is the bad take that she has. Or not anti-Israel. She's
What do I do if I don't want my kids indoctrinated with left-wing values on social justice from Disney? Well, here is the answer. It's ready. It's available right now. Bentkey. It's a new company from the Daily Wire. We are dedicated to creating the next generation of timeless stories that transport kids into a world of adventure, imagination, and joy. It's an entirely new app with original and licensed series. There are 150 episodes available for your kids right now, with new episodes released every Saturday morning. My kids already love the shows. They're beautifully produced, they're fun to watch with their kids, and you know they're safe. We're vouching for them. Download that app and start streaming right now.
And attack phase. Yeah. I don't accept an alliance with this guy. He just saw that I did a massive move right there, and he was like, oh shit, gotta get an alliance with this guy.
She doesn't understand. She's just asking questions. When she was trying to have Kanye on and engaging with his overt anti-Semitic, overt Hitler love, overt Nazi love, I just love him because he had an ill aesthetic. No! Kanye, we don't get to love him. That's not how it works.
You love everyone, bro.
Episode too.
During a manic episode,
Kind of
unraveling
enabling
and
vibes.
unhinged before the whole world. And so I've been consistent on Candace Owens, and this whole time, go back and look. I've been consistent about Candace Owens this whole time. She's been on one. She's been strawmanning, whether it's strawmanning the Protestant Reformation, whether it's strawmanning actual issues that do need to be adjusted. But the way she's talking about these things did not make these things better. They made them worse. Okay, so the fact that now you guys are waking up is just silly. It's just silly. So Candace Owens has been on a bender of 5 years, completely just taking L's. Now, this is her response, which again, just shows you where her state of mind is. And this is her response. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are ye when men... By the way, it sounds like she's in the KJV.
KJV.
Everybody want to be extra spiritual when they're using the KJV. Which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all matter of evil against you falsely for my sake. No one can serve two masters. And she adds this. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God, both God and money. So I don't think this is the one passage, right?
This is like a
She kind of
compilation.
Frankenstein some things.
You know.
She kind of Frankenstein some things. What's the other slide here? Is there another one? And then she drops Christ is King. So she pulls the Christian card. People are saying this, you cannot serve both God and money, is a direct anti-Semitic trope. You can't serve both.
Kind of funny though.
Oh.
Like you Jews are about money. Like that's how people are receiving this. I don't know if that's her intent. Yeah.
That's a stretch.
I don't know if that's her intent. That's how the Breaking Points guys said it. And they're no fan of Israel, and they're no fan of Ben Shapiro, and they're no fan of Candace Owens.
Exactly.
And that's how they interpret it. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, but like they want, yeah.
I'm just
I get what you're
saying. I think responding to all of this with a Bible verse is extremely unbefitting. I think it's very convenient to be a Christian right now for her when you are getting dragged for just having bad take after bad take after bad take. Bad take after bad take. She's just been on bad take after bad take. I think it's a lot of this stuff that we're doing under the guise of I'm just asking questions. Right? Like, I'm just asking questions. Like, are Jews really persecuted? Well, why do they run the world?
So they run the world, but they're persecuted?
I'm just asking questions. It's a L. Now, I don't think anyone has an issue with saying, "Hey, man, I think the IDF has to be very careful with what they're doing in Gaza." Hey, I think that sometimes Israel could be heavy-handed, and we got to be careful that innocent civilians aren't injured. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying those things. I don't think that's what she's saying, and I think that's clear as day. And I'm not even one of those. I mean, we've covered the end days stuff and the evangelicals' fascination with Israel and our unrelenting support, because if Israel builds the temple, then Jesus comes back, right? I'm not even 100% on that. I'm not even 100% sold on that. I'm saying Israel has a right to exist as a nation, and Candace Owens should have more
I do think that Israel has a right to
instead of
exist as a
asking silly
nation, but
questions
I don't think that
like,
America
what
should
about
be
the
just
Muslim
funding them
quarter
all the
in
time.
Jerusalem? Like, she should just be more.
We got our
educated
own
on that
problems.
As someone that's going to get up and start covering this stuff, and when you factor it all in, and all the goofy stuff she's did just within the last year, with 1.5 Kanye on, within the last year of the terrible Catholic versus Protestant debate, within the this is not unlike her. This is this is right in line with who she's always been, and there's a lot of stuff I agree with her on, but there's just also a lot of stuff I like. She's my least favorite conservative. How about that? She's probably my least favorite conservative. Like, I'll take Brett Cooper over Candace Owens.
Oh, super. I'll still watch Brett Cooper.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'll take Brett Cooper. Out of all the folks over on, I'll take Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager is more sensible than Candace Owens.
I do
And
not
she was with
like Dennis Prager.
Someone said, when is it bad to point to scripture?
Oh, he was saying that it's okay to jerk off to fucking, like, drawings of child porn. That's fucked up. Oh, fucking Dennis Prager was saying that it's okay to jerk off to animated child porn.
That's fucked.
Yeah, it's like, no. That's fucking disgusting. Don't say that shit.
When you are in the middle of a horrible take and your boss is publicly
Yeah,
rebuking you
like, what the
because you don't know
fuck?
what you're talking about.
Well, that's
It's
such a
time to
bad
say.
take. Like, why would you, even if you thought that, why would you say it out loud?
Yeah, I know somebody that was working in like kind of a sus work environment, Christian work environment. And they're like, hey, I want to have
Makes
a
you
meeting
sound
with
like one.
you, the boss, with somebody else there to talk about these issues. And they're like, ooh, have you seen the handbook? Matthew 18, I think. Where it's like, handle things in private.
Yeah, yeah,
Go to your brother. Right. And she's like, no, I think accountability is good. She's like, I'm gonna have to talk to HR.
Oh,
but it's like one of those. It's
Right,
like
right,
it's
right.
like pulling up Bible verses when it's convenient for you.
Yep.
That's kind of.
Yep. So anyway, I'm no fan. I think some of her conversations have been good. I think some of her recent owning the libs at these universities and the non-binary stuff is pretty good. I think this is just bad. I think she is not a peacemaker. I don't think she's ever been a peacemaker.
It's not her.
I don't think
Enneagram type.
she's ever been willing to have good faith conversations with people.
Why
she
didn't this guy
disagrees
go
with. So
fucking
even
fuck
though
up that guy?
I disagree with Ben Shapiro, who is Jewish, and I'm closer aligned to Candace Owens, who professes to be a Christian, I think in this situation, she takes a completely awful take in attempting to, in the words of Ben Shapiro, have a faux sophistication with regards to this entire situation. I'm glad that Ben Shapiro called her out. I'm curious where this goes. I don't think her using scripture here to justify some of the bad takes she had was appropriate. I don't think it was helpful. And I think Ben Shapiro is right, even though I don't believe.
Even though you're not a Jew. And
believe
attack
Ben Shapiro's
phase.
right when it comes to faith. I think in this situation, he's right. I think Candace is wrong. I don't think it was helpful in all of her coverage with this, but specifically the last year and a half of just L after L, from Andrew Tate to Kanye to the Protestant versus Catholic debate. She hasn't been a peacekeeper. That's the truth. She hasn't been a peacemaker. She hasn't been any of the above. So I'm curious where this goes. Where do you guys think this goes? Is Ben Shapiro going to eventually fire her? Is she going to leave? Because
That'd be pretty bad if he fired her.
Over and over. And so I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about this. If you want to go deeper in your spiritual discipline, consider picking up one of our Bless God prayer journals, available right now.
Oh, where was that? Yeah, we're gonna watch this after this video.
Your ancestors have been carrying, or maybe you have been involved in in addictions, in certain things that you have to stop, and you need to have discipline. If we are the army of God, we have to be trained as the army. We have to have discipline. We have to have strategies. We need to adopt this thing, and this takes me back again to what I was telling you, that this is why the church doesn't get involved in warfare, because they don't know how to.
So she talks about the big elephant in the room, which, again, according to the stats, 60% of men in church, I don't know how active in church, but men that go to church look at corn. And I want to say 20% of women, though I could be wrong, will look at corn at least once a week.
20% of women in church, or 20% of women in general?
Dabbling with some stuff you shouldn't be dabbling with, okay? And she's going to elaborate.
Because they don't know that there's spiritual principles and things that we have to put into place if we want to advance God's kingdom. There's a lot of stuff, even for protection, right? Having a holy life, having a consecration, having this communion with the Holy Spirit brings protection. You have close portals in your life, so when you are entering the enemy's kingdom, he cannot do anything to you. All right, but if you are like casting out demons and you are doing this, and then you are sinning behind, and you know, but I can do this. Well, it's going to happen to you the same thing that happened to the sons of Sceva. They didn't know Jesus. They knew Paul. They didn't know Jesus. That's why knowing Jesus is the key. Having intimacy is the key to enter into warfare and change the trajectory of a nation.
You know, the private sin, and I don't mean to knock it, and I'm not minimizing it in any way, quite the opposite actually. But people write into me about in my
that makes no sense.
People, I talk to priests, they say this is what they hear from 90% of guys in confession. It's what you just mentioned.
90% of guys. So again, Michael's coming from the Catholic tradition, so he's referencing to a priest here in confession as they go and confess their sins. The priests. We should be confessing our sins.
Weird.
As Christians, we do it to each other according to James. But say 90% of the stuff the priest here is about corn.
And so if you were saying that sexual immorality is a big part of witchcraft and the occult and Satanism,
that makes
what
sense.
Does it mean that, at least since the advent of the internet, and certainly since the iPhone, is everywhere, something like 90% plus of men look at it. A huge number of women look at it. I read somewhere something like 60% of women look at it.
What?
It shocked me. The age of exposure to it is extremely young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, well, I guess I do want to say that everything has a spiritual component. Because nothing's merely physical, you know, it's not, we're spirits too. But what does it say that this key element of witchcraft is now effectively ubiquitous? That it's everywhere, that porn is just everywhere, and that this, if sexual immorality is a big part of witchcraft and the occult, well, what is the rapid expansion of that say?
And they talked about how sexual immorality and connected it to things like The Sound of Freedom and SA and Grape earlier in the interview. So again, you guys should really go watch this full interview. But this connection specifically to corn and corn culture, and there is a corn culture, by the way, meaning that just because there's explicit content in these explicit websites, this stuff is also pervasive all over Instagram. Even if it's not X-rated explicit, there is a corn culture that's all over social media, right? In our films.
So if we go back to the Bible, we talk about the Jezebel spirit. The Jezebel spirit, she was a witch, right? And she was immoral, so she was involved in sexual immorality. So she was released over a place. I believe that because of witchcraft, New Age, the occultism is expanding too much. That brings remember something. I want to say something, and it's that demons don't walk alone. The principalities, they don't walk by themselves. As I said, we were talking about authorities and ranks. They move with certain powers that come under them, and then they have others that come under them, right? Witchcraft, which is a New Age, occultism, all of these practices, Satanism, all of these things bring sexual immorality. So now, because of the occultism is rapidly expanding in our nations, we see the sexual immorality also being released upon our nations. So this is why, like, when you go to a place, and you see like there's a lot of sexual immorality and prostitution, you know, there's some sort of witchcraft here too.
You go to a place, you see people being trafficked, there's probably witchcraft there.
That's the sign of it.
Yeah.
Or one of the big signs of it. So then what does one do? Do we just ban? That's what I would do. I mean, but
we should.
I believe like there's a strong man for a reason. This is why, coming back again, I see the church fighting in the spiritual realm, punching the air, not knowing what they are punching. I see that. I see like people like just. But who are you fighting against? Who are you?
It's hard for me to
against?
understand
we need
her.
To have understanding that they are strongman and they are minions. If you bind the minions and you remove the minions, the strongman is still there because there is a legal right. So the portal is still open for this minion to come back again, or other ones to come back again and leave. And so this is why we, as the head of Christ, we need to actually see, okay, what is the strongman moving in here? We just don't buy porn. That's a minion. That's just like the consequence of something bigger. So we don't.
That's the symptom. That's just a symptom to something deeper. There's a deeper issue at the root and we're just dealing with the symptom. She's making an argument that it's the Jezebel spirit.
By the porn, we don't buy the addiction. What is actually the big thing that's moving in that area? Okay, it could be maybe like, as I said, witchcraft. It could be like control and manipulation, and that's been released. It's not just porn, so it's actually understanding what are we binding, and this goes also to a personal level, right? Let's say that someone is dealing with addictions. The person is dealing with a lot of addictions, porn, maybe drug addictions, alcoholism. The person just doesn't bind that, but actually, what if the strong man in that person's life is actually rejection? It's actually maybe a traumatic experience that person had when they were young that opened up the portal to addiction. So,
Hi, I'm Story.
What did it say?
Your kid's brain-building storytelling buddy. I tell stories, sing songs, and help your kids build age-specific skills 100% screen-free, so you can take a breather. I even help them wind down for bedtime. And the press seems to love me. Keep your kids engaged and your mind at ease. Discover the wonder of StoryPod.
I'm not sure how many of you guys know my story, but I've shared it a couple times. If you guys really want the detailed version, you can see it. I shared it on Tim Ross's podcast about a year ago. I've shared it a couple times. But as a child, I was SA'd. It was about 7 or 8.
Oh yeah, I
And
did
the
hear
crazy
this.
part is that I was my son's age now, and there were some older teenage boys in the neighborhood that SA'd me. And what she is describing
That's
is
fucked up.
literally what happened to me. It opened up an addiction. And it opened up, the traumatic event opened up something in me that followed me for decades. It followed me for decades. And it takes so much deliberate focus to be tapped in to the consecration and the sanctification process. And if you have that sort of stuff in your childhood, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it. Got to deal with it.
Damn, I was really
in the
hoping that
spiritual,
person wasn't
going
gonna do
up,
that.
Letting the elders pray for you, deliverance, ministry time, whatever you want to call it. Got to deal with it in the spiritual, but you also got to deal with it in the physical. Got to deal with the mental illness, the mental health aspect of it. I went to therapy. I still have a therapist I see probably once every other month. His name is Dr. Rudy. We actually put together a course called MasterMyHabits.com, completely free course to help people with the freedom forming habits aspect of this.
No.
The mental, the spiritual, and the physical. And the physical. One of the best things I did, not to keep harping on this point, is I got my body in check. I started waking up earlier, which forced me to go to bed earlier, which kept me off of looking at crazy things in the middle of the night because I was up till 1 or 2 in the morning working on music. And all of these things work together to help me move towards freedom and breakthrough in all aspects, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. And it requires work, but God is good. The Spirit is good. And you know, I wish that I didn't have to wrestle with it for decades, if I'm being honest with you. But there's something to having gone through that sort of stuff that those scars that I have, God has repeatedly used those scars and that aspect of my testimony to help other people know that, one, they're not alone, and two, that freedom is available. Freedom is available. You don't have to you don't got to walk into heaven with a limp. Like, you can walk in freedom. You can walk in freedom. Like, freedom is available, right? But sanctification is a process. Being sanctified and being conformed more and more to who Jesus is a process.
So when you go right there to help the person to be set free from that trauma, you are helping that person to be set free from the addictions and all of these things.
Right.
So it's actually going to the root. Like, we are
Yes.
like trees, and I see a lot of people cutting the bad fruit of the tree instead of healing the root.
When I was in youth group, I first got saved. We would talk about corn, but we never talked about the root. We would talk about the consequences of whatever things we're dealing with. We never talked about the root of why we were this way.
It's important that we come back. What is the root of the issue? What is the root of the tree? So we start to bring healing to the body of Christ, actually to the root, and not just the leaves and cutting and thinking that I'm just going to cut this and hope that it's not going to grow up again. It's going to grow up again because the root is ill.
Right.
So I believe that that's part of one of the strategies that the Lord has given me to help people and to pray for nations is actually, what is the root?
Because sometimes people think they can just go back in time and say, if only we went back to the 1990s, we'd all be happy. Or if we went back to the 1950s, things would be better. But I think, well, hold on. First of all, you can't go back in time. But second of all, even if you could go back in time, if you just rewind the tape, how is it not going to play out exactly as it already did? You know, aren't the seeds of the present destruction that we're seeing?
Oh, what the
weren't they
fuck?
sown way back then? Weren't they sown even probably before
What
that?
the fuck? How did that even happen?
Okay.
This stuff has always been here, man. It's just the technology, which can be used for great good, can also be used for evil. So it's always been here. Porn culture has always been here. It's just more challenging now, but it's always been here.
What's at the heart here? Well, at the heart of, look, if porn is just one symptom or one expression of this problem, well, it's an expression of the notion that we can do whatever we want. This notion of maximal individual autonomy, self-sovereignty. That's a much deeper, bigger, stronger man kind of a problem than just getting your jollies off on some internet video.
Right.
The problem of people who are in the porn industry, every single woman who's ever been involved in porn has an issue with her father, right? You just interview after interview, testimony after testimony. I mean, there's no. It's 100% of the time. Well, that would be a root problem.
You douche.
If you only prune away at the leaves,
You're
well,
breaking
the
our
root is still
alliance.
there. It's just going to continue to grow. So then there are these deeper problems. And obviously, ultimately, we can trace this all the way back to the Garden of Eden. But it does seem that politically there are some things that we could do that are practical.
Oh, they left. That's
that
why.
we could take immediately. You mentioned strong man. And now today, if you ever oppose this liberalism, this decadence, this sin and debauchery, you're called an authoritarian. Well, it's very. You want to get rid of porn, you're an authoritarian. You want to suggest that Christianity is a better basis for culture than, I don't know, pride parades. You're an authoritarian. They've said this about Viktor Orban in Hungary. They've said he's an authoritarian. This guy's been popularly elected many times, but he said, no, our country is going to be a Christian country. We're not going to force you to go to church. We're not going to force you to worship anyway, but the country is going to be oriented toward God. And for this, every country around the West is at this guy's throat. They want to attack him. But that seems like a practical thing that one could do in politics.
100%. 100%. And this is coming back again. It is about the authority. The person that is there is like in the spiritual realm has kind of like given the keys of that nation. So whatever you speak over that nation is going to be released because you have authority. The same thing that the parents have authority over the children, right? We are the head of our children. So when we speak those things over their life, it's released in the spiritual atmosphere and it manifests. The same thing happened to the nation. So what it would be a good way of actually changing a nation, apart from the spiritual matters, is actually establishing someone in power that has the heart of God that are going to actually release those things over the nation and say, like, a strong man, you are not going to rule in this nation. This is who is going to rule this nation, and it's Jesus.
Interesting. Good stuff. Good stuff. Shout out to Julie Lopez. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in.
You were mocking me for being of average height. I can't control that. I can't control my genetics. That wasn't very. You were mocking me. I did not appreciate that.
Asking our followers if I should wear heels tonight, and I did not.
I never mocked on her appearance, and I did plenty of subject matter there, believe me, but I never did it. So I didn't appreciate that.
So today we are going to be debating the resolution. We're going to be debating banning pornography. Specifically, the resolution is should the U.S. government ban pornography? Now, the structure of the debate I'll go over very quickly, and then we'll jump right into it. We'll have opening statements from each of you guys, 10 minutes for John, then 10 minutes for Brianna, and then you guys will have a chance to rebuttal. It'll be 5 minutes for John, then 5 minutes for Brianna. And then after that, I will have 4 questions, 2 for each debater. There's going to be 1 for John to start with. You'll have 5 minutes to answer it, and then Brianna will have 3 minutes to respond to that. And then we'll go to Brianna for 5 minutes. John will have 3 minutes to respond to that. And then again, John for 5 minutes, Brianna for 3, Brianna for 5, John for 3. And then we'll conclude with a 30-minute Q&A where we will have a line right here where people can ask questions for both of you guys. So, and then 3 minutes each of concluding statements. So, let's start off with you, John. You'll have 10 minutes to give your opening remarks on whether the U.S. government should ban pornography.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? All right. 11,000 people turned out this evening to see this tremendous debate. It's 11,000. You don't have to look around. I assure you that's there. We will eject you if you disagree. We will, at Uncensored America, we will censor you and eject you. We don't need you. We have 11,000 other people. But I would firstly like to thank the tremendous Uncensored America organization for putting this event together. They do a great job bringing back the tradition of American debates to the college campus, and I am sincerely honored to be a part of that. I'd also like to thank my opponent this evening, Brianna, for coming out to debate this topic. It's an important issue, a controversial issue. I think it'll be interesting. And of course, as well, would like to thank the wonderful audience, the ladies and gentlemen, very fine people who came out to watch the debate this evening. And the topic that we'll be dealing with is, of course, whether we should ban pornography. Ban, of course, being a very scary word, lots of very scary connotations to it. And my opponent will be arguing that we should not, and I will be taking the opposite position. You know, when I first began speaking about this issue, I was much more focused on how pornography affects young men physiologically, what it does to their minds, to their spirits, and by extension, how that affects their state of being in the world as a whole and what their place is. But with all the arguments that could be made this evening on this issue on either side, I expect this is ultimately going to come down to what the role of government is, which is really to say what actually is human nature. What do we tend to do? How do we tend to behave? And what conditions are most conducive to our flourishing? And due to these things that we know about us, when does it become necessary for the government to intervene? And the idea of the state or the government, in the first place, is something that exists to take into account these truths about human nature and create a framework that would allow for the general well-being of its people. And for centuries within Western civilization, specifically the Anglo-Saxon tradition, which inspired the foundation of our country, that understood perfectly well that most people, your average person, they're not going to be some hyper-rational, some hyper-vigilant agent, and therefore they will need some sort of entity to protect them from predation and exploitation at the hands of others, typically for handsome profit, which is exactly what we see nowadays. Moreover, the tradition which inspired and cultivated our framework of government was one rooted in Puritanism, which is now typically used as an insult by people in the camp of my opponent to say bland or uninteresting, to which we may counter with normal and not disgusting. But the point is that John Adams described our Constitution as being written for a moral and religious people, and that it would be, quote, wholly inadequate for any other group of people. This is to say that if our founding fathers heard the argument that the legal framework to which they bequeathed us was being used to justify the proliferation of the hardcore internet pornography that we see nowadays, they would have been appalled by this idea. And though modern activists enjoy obscuring it, our national tradition and our legal tradition are rooted in Christianity. Of course, the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law establishing a state religion, which some misinterpret as a separation of church and state. But this is not exactly because they believed in freedom of religion, but rather because they were skeptical of the influence and authority of the Catholic Church. It is what it is, and they wanted to make sure that their country would remain sovereign from the Vatican. This is not to say that all arguments against pornography have to be from the viewpoint of Christianity. This is all to say that if we can demonstrate that pornography is of significant harm to the American public, which it is, and that it is not constitutionally protected such that our government cannot take action against it, which it is not, then of course we can and should take action to rid it from society. And the reason that it's important to bring up Christianity is because the culture at the time of the founders, which they were all a part of, was Christian. And so to obscure the intentions or parameters of their legal framework for our country in service of justifying the nature of pornography and the way that it exists in society presently is complete nonsense. If they're not here to speak for themselves because they've been dead for centuries, we can certainly get a general idea of what they have said and what they would have intended. And perhaps that's true, but how does that carry into the present day? It's a great question. To be honest, my work on this issue did not begin because of Christianity. It began because I was seeing what it was doing to the young men in this country, and by extension, how it was affecting families and society as a whole. To give you an idea of the effects of it, we should mention that 80% of men have viewed it in the last week, 50% of young men are viewing it every day now. The average age of exposure is 11 years old.
That is crazy.
Normal distribution. Fully 50% of children are viewing it for the first time at ages younger than 11, and fully 22%, about a quarter, of all internet pornography viewed by minors is viewed by children younger than 10. All of these data points, with their trends taken into account, show that year by year, more people are watching it more often at a younger age, and it's an addiction because it does have effects, and nobody talks about it because it's embarrassing, but it is ultimately true, and it's been shown to rewire the neural pathways in your brain to make you addicted to it, to crave more of it. Similarly to how the brains of drug addicts will show to have different neurochemical structures and pathways, especially within the reward circuitry portion of the brain, which may also be why, if you look at brain scans of drug addicts and pornography users, they show to be very similar in clinical evaluations. This is also why men who consume pornography experience feelings of depression, anxiety, lack of focus, brain fog, etc., because their dopamine receptors have been completely hijacked to compel them to place access to internet pornography as a priority. They're incapable of now experiencing pleasure the same way throughout their day-to-day lives, and that's going to affect their general state of being throughout the world. And so it is a slippery slope. You've got 50% of men saying that they're now interested in material that was once not interesting or even repulsive to them. You've got 20% of men saying that they have to actually use pornography while having sex with normal women to maintain arousal. That is
pretty
that is
fucking
artificial
weird.
Supplementing you to be in that state. And there are lots of other problems, decreased gray matter in the brain, for example, that are caused by pornography. And of course, the younger you begin watching it, as the trends show, is what is happening. That is when your brain is the most plastic and the most malleable. Therefore, the more damaging and irreversible effects are going to occur at that state of your life. And as you may know, I put out a 2-hour-long video covering all the science behind this with hundreds of studies all cited, and you can go watch that if you want more information. But the bottom line, since I've only got 10 minutes, is that if the majority of divorces weren't citing pornography as a factor, if millions of young men in the world weren't reporting these systems, if children weren't being exposed to this content, like we said, at age 9 or 11 on average, if young people in this country weren't experiencing a cluster of anxieties and depression and feelings of isolation and inability to connect with other people, which is all directly linked to the widespread proliferation of pornography like we mentioned, perhaps I'd feel differently. Honestly, I might even be sympathetic to the cries that we've seen, or unsympathetic rather, to the cries that we've seen from the religious right about this topic for the last several decades, since clearly the effects they warned about have been insignificant. Perhaps I'd even roll my eyes at them, but it's exactly the opposite. The opposite is what we're seeing because, we have a skeptical view of human nature naturally. And just how I think that the average person should have a right to go about their lives without having food waved in front of them that's going to make them sick and addicted and obese and poisoned, I likewise believe that people should be able to live their lives without being exposed to content that entices them into pursuing their own self-destruction. We have to ask ourselves, at what point do we understand that something is wrong, that we're headed in the wrong direction? Why would we not take action against that? Literally millions of American children and millions of young men are watching.
This douche.
hardcore pornography every day, and they're harming themselves, but we're supposed to continue to allow that because that's why George Washington crossed the Delaware and froze at Valley Forge so that we could enshrine our God-given right to masturbate to videos of people having sex on the internet? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely nonsense. It compromises our men, it makes our families weaker, and the translation of that into society has been catastrophic. We are living in a sexually dysfunctional society. People are isolated, families are collapsing, people are not getting married, they're largely not even dating anymore, and these trends are completely new within our society, by the way. It'd be foolish to ignore the explosion and the proliferation of pornography in the last few decades or so, particularly the last 15 years or so, as a contributing and significant factor to this, because men are not going out into the world to meet women. They're instead being enticed by advertisements on the internet to stay alone and drain themselves of all their energy and all their ambition. Now, there are plenty of things that can be considered harmful to society that we would never ban because there's a large benefit to them as well. Tens of thousands of people die every year from car accidents, but no one would think to ban cars because we understand there's a tremendous benefit to them. What tremendous benefit is there as a society that we are getting from unlimited, easy access to pornography that would outweigh and excuse all of the harm that we know that it does? Why is it ultimately good and worth it that children in elementary school are accessing this sexually depraved material? It's not like other things where you can more or less choose to consume it. It exists as an artificially created, carefully advertised version of what we are programmed to seek as men. The moment you view it, or in many cases just think about it or hear about it, you're no longer thinking clearly or rationally. That's why it's one thing if 20 years ago you go to an adult video store, you get a Playboy or something, but being able to access it now free of charge completely at any age, any variety, in any moment, it's completely different. Our brains are not wired to be able to handle that type of material. The things which our brains are wired to pursue most, food and sex, have now been corrupted and artificially synthesized to now the average American man is just this like fat, porn-addicted slob. This is not a healthy society, and we're perfectly capable of writing that trajectory. So in my experience, there are a few people who will try to make the case that pornography is actually good. They'll make the case maybe it's just not bad, it's neutral. But my opponent this evening is going to have to argue why it is a moral good for children to be able to access hardcore pornography at the click of a button, why it's good to provide unprecedented financial incentive to human traffickers and to sexual abusers, why it's good that young men are experiencing these symptoms of anxiety and depression because of their fried out dopamine receptors, why it's good that we are clicking our way down the path to total sexual dysfunction and depravity. The entire role of government, by definition, is to compel individual behavior to protect citizens from being harmed. Everything from the speed limit sign to homicide laws do this. Since it's acknowledged in all of our laws, why would it not draw the line at this? My opponent will have to argue why that line should not be drawn to protect children from being exposed to this material, protect women from having sexual abusers and human traffickers, be paid for posting this material online, why families should not be protected from having their fathers and husbands enticed by this material, and why young boys should not be protected from warping their sexual habits and reward circuitry, making them impotent, anxious, and depressed. Also that pornographers and advertisers can make lots of money, and people such as my opponent get to continue to normalize their perversion and depravity upon society. So literally, yeah, $1 billion industry creating a sexually dysfunctional society, so I'm curious to hear why stopping that is worse than allowing it to continue. Thank you.
Martin Gelbke. I'm one of the MDs at Bridge Orthopedics. I've been here about 7 years now. My background, I trained mostly at the University of Michigan. I did medical school at the University of Virginia and fellowship trained in adult reconstruction, which is basically hip and knee replacements. Adult reconstruction or hip.
I'm surprised how far ahead I went after
I'm gonna give you a little bit back.
I literally had like one spot for a little bit, and then I just took this whole thing.
Yeah, last time I looked over.
I'm going to talk
I was
about the areas
getting
where we
fucked
disagree.
on.
Now I want to talk about some of my concerns about the way that John has framed this. So,
I hope
yeah,
this
my,
motherfucker doesn't come at me.
career started actually with
Don't
a lot
come
of
at
the
me,
way
bro.
that a lot of y'all I was a young, eager student. I wanted to go make a change in the world. Eventually, I launched
You
the video game
douche.
studio, and I started to find that I had
You
certain
think it's cool to pick on people?
I wanted to make change in the world. Yeah, I wasn't really sure how to get out there and put that change in the world. I'm not going to rehash Gamergate, but I am going to say one of the
Oh my goodness.
things I did do is
You're
run for public
complaining about
office.
Gamergate.
And when you run for public office, especially something like United States Congress, the first thing you learn is all of these issues that John is trying to tell you are really simple,
Why is it?
are actually a lot more complicated. Like, let's just look at the tenet of what we're talking about today. Should we ban porn? Let's think about that at
Yes.
a really high level. What is this going to involve? Well, the Democrats are going to spend about $1.4 billion in this election. I did a little bit of back-of-the-envelope math about how much it would cost to go do a constitutional convention and actually put a porn ban into the Constitution. They can very lowball number on that would be us collectively coming together, 2/3 of the states ratifying this and spending $20 billion having a conversation with ourselves about this. You start looking through jurisprudence when you think about issues like should we ban pornography? And you start looking at things like the Miller test, you find out where it's banned, what is legal, and what the role is of states to be able to regulate things like this. And it's just so much more complicated than he wants to make it sound. So John, this is where we're starting. I want to talk about some areas that we're probably going to agree on. One of the things I didn't like about the way the left responded to your videos is I think they mocked you. You know, several of my friends have made videos really mocking you and your point. And the part of your agreement that you're
I don't like the audio's getting fucked up.
You're absolutely damn right about that. My own party has completely failed to seriously address this crisis that young men are facing. And I have to tell you, looking at some of these stats, it is absolutely terrifying. You have men in their 20s, they are half as likely as women to be in relationships. The share of sexually active Americans right now is at a 30-year low. More than 60% of young men are single today. This is twice the rate of women. So you look at economic uncertainty as our economy has shifted to more of a knowledge economy, and whereas men used to be the primary breadwinners, today I see a lot of women that are competing in my favorite field, computer science, on a more field with men. And I think there are a lot of men out there that are asking themselves, what is my role in the world?
I don't like the audio right now.
How can I, why am I feeling so lonely? Why am I reaching out to people and it's not working? This is a problem that we do need to take seriously. Where I think John is going really, really wrong is he's giving you extremely simple solutions to very complicated problems. One of the very first words you learn when you start to work in public policy is multifactorial. So if you ask yourselves, why are young men getting so addicted to pornography right now, which I agree with John, it is much worse than it used to be. We had a pandemic where people are not meeting each other face to face. His point about some of the stuff being far more available than it was for my generation, that's dead on. But we are also seeing, I was talking to some psychologists before this event started, we were talking about the crisis of young people who do not have access to therapists. There's not enough of the supply. The rate
Just
of people
stop.
out there, they're dealing with anxiety, social disorders. We've never seen this before in American history. So, it's not as simple. We could go spend $20 billion, and instead of addressing really serious problems, we could try to ban porn and hope that that helps young men. I don't think that that's the problem, though. Let me get real with all of y'all out there. I don't think there's a single young person in this crowd today that isn't keenly aware that Washington is not working for your generation. They're not interested in student debt. They're not interested in your path forward. They're not interested in helping you afford a house. They're not interested in getting you a living wage or health care. And I would posit to you that we need to channel that anger and that frustration that all of us feel into something more productive than a pie-in-the-sky argument about banning all pornography. I hope we can talk a little bit more about policy specifics, because there are ways that don't involve a total ban of this that will help safeguard children. They will help men deal with pornography addiction. We do have common sense solutions for this, and I hope we can talk about it tonight. Thank you.
What is Acorns, by the way? So Acorns is a financial tech company. So I bought everyone's gifts today with my new Acorns Mighty Oak card. Yeah. It's a financial tech company that I invested in a couple of years ago. And after the investment, we started thinking about ways, well, what can we do for the people, for the consumers, that we could maybe create a debit card, because usually debit cards are created for spending. In this case, of the highest APYs out there, 3% for checking, 5% for emergency fund. And I wish back in my $7 days when I had $7 that I had a card like this. Yeah. So I'm excited about it. It drops tonight for all of you guys. Oh, and one more thing. I think this is really cool. It's a fun part of what we like to do is, since I started with $7, we're gonna. You look at it like it's like 7 golden tickets.
5-inch Super Bowl.
Well, I would first say, I guess, that while I appreciate the intent behind the conversation and debate, you asked all your Twitter followers and Reddit what your arguments should be. I'm not even speaking to Brianna Wu. I'm speaking to like a trench coat filled with like all the Destiny people and all those people. It's like a conglomerate of people who are not Brianna Wu. Moreover, I think that you are right. It is a complicated and nuanced issue. But that sort of tends to impede what we're trying to discuss, I think, because the resolution is, should we ban pornography? Not, would banning pornography be difficult? And I think that while maybe the particular policy components are nuanced and maybe difficult, the morality is quite clear. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on some of the more moral arguments that I laid out as opposed to the more politically based or policy arguments. But even that, I think, is largely overstated. I mean, you've had a lot of states, you've had a lot of states recently in the last few years take action to ban, well, I guess you would say ID verify at the state level access to internet pornography, which has, of course, caused companies like MindGeek and Pornhub to freak out and say, we're not going to allow you to access it in the state at all, which really kind of gives you some insight into the psychology of the average porn producer, right? Where they're like, oh, you're going to make it so minors can't view the content? Well, we're not going to do business with you anyways. And so it's like, okay, what really is the intent here behind a lot of this content? And also, I really don't think it's a complicated issue, honestly. I think that, we can debate about things, but ultimately, it's like when you get a group of smart guys in those positions of power, near the levers of power, they can figure out how to do pretty much everything. I mean, this is the country that put a man on the moon or constructed a propaganda apparatus sophisticated enough to convince people it did. That seems to be significantly more difficult than just banning pornography, in my opinion. And it is true. A lot of your friends have made videos that were mocking me. I did not appreciate that. But I did see as well, you were mocking me for being of average height. I can't control that. I can't control my genetics. That wasn't fair. You were mocking me. I did not appreciate that.
Asking my followers if I should wear heels tonight, and I did not.
I never mocked on appearance, and there's plenty of subject matter there, believe me, but I never did it. So I didn't appreciate that. But ultimately, jokes aside, I think that the nuance is irrelevant to the discussion of morality, which is really what we're here to discuss. And so I'd be curious, what is your position then on the morality? Assuming we've got our guys, they're hyper hyper competent, we can get it to, well, our guys or girls, we don't want to be discriminatory to our women in politics. There's nothing we love more than women getting involved in politics. So what would that position be, I suppose? Because you did mention, too, the anger and frustration. I think that's very real. There's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, particularly from young men in this country, from young women, too, about how Washington represents them, how they are being represented at all in any form of government. And I think that actually does tie back to the issue of pornography, because like we mentioned, what it does to the reward circuitry, it leaves young men, and some young women, too, but particularly young men, feeling despondent, feeling as though they're just restless and angry and they have no ambition or way forward. And so I think, honestly, pornography, if I had to put on my tinfoil hat, is partially why
I was doing so well.
happening in our society. Because
And then everyone ganged up on me.
Young men are being completely placated and made into these despondent zombies who would rather stay inside and smoke marijuana and watch pornography and play Fortnite, which we'll excuse for the next season. But they would rather do that. They would rather do that than get involved in politics like us, doing cool stuff like us. And so I think that's part of that like young male vitality is just being drained away into tissues and keyboards because of the access that they have to this material, which I think is probably causal to at least a certain extent.
Okay, so we're going to go one at a time here. Just starting at the top, I asked the Destiny subreddit for help debunking the bullshit that you spew on your channel.
Never happened.
Which was a lot of factual errors. And if you want to go blow by blow tonight, we can go through some of the claims you made in the video. I think it'll get a little contentious. I would prefer for us to talk more constructively without ad hominem attacks. This is Brianna Wu that's here talking to you today. I think I have a lot of faults as a person by being authentic and genuine and trying to reach out to people like you in good faith, even when you personally insult me is not. That's how I feel. So let's go one at a time. You know, John, it is really complicated politics, and I know you're trying to minimize that. That's probably because you run a YouTube channel. You don't raise money. You don't run a 501c3 or a 501c4. You don't work with any of the regulatory stuff. There's a whole host of stuff about how you put together a political coalition, how you make people happy, how you fund it, how you stay in compliance with these issues. It is actually really complicated. And the thing I think that you're really minimizing that's important is if you want to build political coalitions, you have to work with other people. Something I would really criticize my own side for is a sense of utopianism. I think there's a real strain in the Democratic Party right now we see where we kind of have this real ideal of what we want to go to and this utopia that we want to move towards. And rather than thinking about the slow, boring parts of how we get there, we shoot for the moon and want the maximalist thing. And I think respectfully, you are the mirror image of that. You have this theocratic vision for the country, which is your right as an American under the First Amendment. You have this theocratic vision of the country where the government steps in, says what you can look at, how you can look at it, how you can do all of this. And we can go through your public statements on that. I have a different vision. I think that if we're serious about solving the actual problems that you've correctly delineated, I think we need to look at how much we are apportioning at the federal level for pornography addiction recovery. I think we need to ask ourselves how many specialists in this we're training. Personally, I think with the explosion of the number of men that are dealing with pornography addiction issues, if you want to go to college and get a master's degree and learn how to help people in this, I think the government should pay for it. So, how much more time do I have, Sean? So I'm just going to talk about the moral issue of this a lot. I think something I've seen you do a lot on your channel is you really paint my side of the aisle with a broad brush. I've been married for 15 years. I don't work in politics or in public policy. Yeah, I am a feminist, but I'm not a fat feminist that you seem to hate so much. Like, I'm an utterly normal person that works in politics, right? And the reason I'm saying this is when it comes to the morality of this, I am equally concerned with children having access to these kinds of really sexual images. I think you're correct. You've seen some of the does stand at a young age. The good news is there are things out there that if you have a Windows computer, there are tools that can do this natively to keep your children safe. Exact same thing with a computer, exact same thing if you're using a Google search engine. So we do have tools that can help parents keep their children away from inappropriate material. The problem is we've done a really poor job educating people on how to set those controls. So I think as always, a more nuanced strategic policy position is looking at the problems and solving them objectively is going to do no better than what we call in engineering a boiled ocean strategy.
It's over there like reading the Kama Sutra or some shit.
What?
Ian's sitting there talking with his not his girlfriend, but his girlfriend for the night about like sex positions and shit. I was like, he's over there reading the Kama Sutra.
Just some random dude.
Now we'll move on to our first question.
Wow.
John, you have 5 minutes to respond, and then Brianna, you'll have 3 minutes to rebuttal that. In an age where VPNs and encryption can bypass a lot of restrictions on the internet, are you concerned that banning pornography would be hard to enforce and would lead to more invasions of privacy by the government and tech?
A lot of my job as somebody who just talks about things on the internet is to cast a wide net. So it is true that like the libertarians love reminding me, you can never really ban something because it'll create black markets, people can always access it. That's true, but typical libertarianism not taking into account the realities of human nature, there are certain extents to which people will go to access material that they want. So if you, for example, regulate pornography the same way that you regulate child pornography, or at the very least do something like mandatory ID verification across all 50 states, it would reduce consumption by probably upwards of 50%. Am I going to be there with my...
send some selfies to the group chat.
Cool friends going knocking door to door, raiding people's houses to see if they have a Playboy. No, I am trying to just reduce consumption in a practical way, not very idealistic, not theocratic, but in a practical way. So would people still download VPNs? Sure. Would people still find a way? Probably. But really what I'm concerned about is that just mass consumption, which really has only arisen in our country in the last few years or so because of the rate of proliferation throughout society that we've seen with this issue. I'd also like to respond to a few things that were mentioned. I am a guy who runs a YouTube channel, okay, guilty as charged. But it is true that there is something to be said about that. I mean, my job is ultimately, I am not to throw shade on my constituents in the YouTube community, but I'm not a guy who's like doing jelly bean eating challenges or something like that. I am the toy maker. My job is to take young men and wind them up and just set them off in the right direction. And these young men, they go and they work in politics. They go and work for media companies that have much larger reach than myself. And you also mentioned that I don't, have any real knowledge or experience working with the legislature because of the nuances of the issue, which is true to a certain extent, but I did work actually with state legislatures who ended up banning this at the state level in terms of the ID verification. So that is true. And, there is a trend, which I only say this because it was brought up, where we can do these events at any point in the country, 24, 48 hours notice. We had guys driving 4 hours to come see this tonight. We have, the consistent ability to get rooms full of 100, 200 young guys with very little notice. And so it's not nothing, but that is something in terms of the message and the political power that you can have with a YouTube channel. And I also think it's worth mentioning, the $20 billion to start a conversation about it. We spent like hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine, Israel, all these other foreign conflicts. $20 billion is pennies to the United States government. And with what I believe to be the extremity and monstrosity that is this issue, I think it would definitely be worth it. And I'm trying to kind of avoid the more bureaucratic argument with, it's just very nuanced. Like, I feel almost bad. Like, I am saying, children probably should not watch pornography. And you're like, so true, but it's just so complicated the way to get them to stop doing that. And so I would wonder, like, if we could say, do something at the state level and mandate ID verification, that'd be something that you would support. I mean, red states were able to do that. It was done pretty quickly. We have significant majorities in both chambers of state Congress. You could literally just wake up and do that if they had the willpower to do so, but they largely don't, probably because they're watching porn. And I also think it's true. You seem to allude as well to the, parents need to just be more involved in their kids' lives. That is definitely true. If every parent was a great parent, they would install these softwares and children would be watching this material. But I honestly think that the way it exists now in society with how it's literally marketed to children on social media, the way that friends are watching it, there's an ecosystem that exists that honestly is beyond the scope of what a good parent can do. I mean, if you're a parent and you're trying to prevent your child from watching this, you have to have a level of involvement that is multiple times greater than, say in the 1970s or something where like, Johnny's outside and he's got a crumpled up picture of a boob on a Polaroid or something like that. It's like a completely different environment. So in an ideal world, parents would be watching their kids and monitoring this, but I'm not willing to take the risk of maybe parents aren't actually doing their job completely competently, and that's going to have widespread effects on the ecosystem of young people in this country as a whole, who with the messed up brains will then become the older people and so on and so forth.
I just wanted to take one point you just made in really good faith. I don't think that parents are bad or they don't care when it comes to doing this stuff. I think the programs are actually relatively difficult to set up. In prepping for this debate, I did it on iOS, I did it with Google, I did it with Microsoft. It actually took a high degree of technical knowledge. I'm a software engineer. I had to play around settings for a really long time. The good news is, I don't usually look at Orange on, but I did try to with mechanical controls on, and these are actually pretty good tools overall. So I think this is one of the big problems in the tech industry, that we create really, really good ways to solve problems, but they're made by engineers, and we are just the worst people at making things that people understand how to actually use. So I don't know if, this is where it really gets into my belief that the United States has really forfeited our role in the world in shaping technology legislation. If you look with the GDPR in Europe, they are actually taking a much more aggressive role in doing things like the kind of chargers you can use, what the privacy standards are. I urge you to actually look at the people in Washington, D.C. They're actually making your technology policy here in the United States. Like, one is a home economics major that came from my home state of Mississippi. They're completely unqualified. So it pains me to say this, but I actually don't believe that our Congress, even with the best of intentions, could write a bill that could ban pornography if that was a good idea, which I don't think it is. If you look at the actual jurisprudence and the legal issues around these ID check verifications, study after study shows that these do not work. So I think the answer really is making these tools easier for parents to use and making them more aware of it.
We'll have your first question today, Brianna.
Sure.
You have 5 minutes for this to respond, and John will have 3 minutes to rebuttal. Some people have argued that easy access pornography has led to porn addiction. Notably, some people like Billie Eilish have said that porn addiction destroys her brain, create unrealistic expectations for sex, kill her sexual appetite, and even allow for some physical and sexual abuse. Do you believe that there are some restrictions on pornography that should be in place in order to prevent any potential addiction or other negative effects?
I don't think there are restrictions that should be put in place. Pornography addiction is very clearly a real thing. And I think John is completely correct that it is getting worse for this generation, just objectively. Go look at this. Now, I'm not as confident about the studies I was able to find, as he says on his YouTube channel. The most strong evidence I was able to find of this was for a self-report of users with 2,075 people actually self-reporting whether they thought they had a problem. 11% men and 3% of women said they thought that they had a problem with pornography addiction somewhat. So even if that doesn't actually rise to the level of needing clinical treatment, I think all of us can agree, like if 11% of people are feeling that way, that's something we need to be thinking about as a society. And with this, I try not to talk too much personally, but I do want to share a story. I recently celebrated 20 years of sobriety. When I was a young congressional staffer, I found myself with polyaddiction disorder. I was literally doing any drug I could get my hand on. I went to the PEP program in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is the same program Tiger Woods went to for his sex addiction problem. And they got me clean 20 years ago. It gave me some really, really helpful tools for the rest of my career. I've struggled with addiction. I beat addiction. 20 years of sobriety is a huge, huge accomplishment. And the way that you beat addiction is you have structure in your life, you have awareness of what your triggers are, and something I actually think conservatives are really smart to advocate, something I wish we'd do more on the left, which is advocating responsibility. If you're struggling with addiction, the only thing that's going to get you sober is accountability, which is why we have is to do that. What makes this more difficult is if you start looking at pornography addiction treatment. Do you know the inpatient, live at the hospital treatment for that costs $38,000 a month? That's just simply not tenable, and it's unclear from everything I've seen if insurance is even going to cover it, which is why I believe so many people are turning to these YouTube videos. So I think the problem of pornography addiction is serious. I agree with John that it's growing. I just don't think the answer is to ban it. I think we need a national strategy on addiction, and last point, which is why I was so glad that President Biden has sought out a massive increase in addiction funding at the federal level to help people with all kinds of addictions.
3 minutes to respond.
I can tell that you used to work on the Hill. The solution is we need to get everyone together and talk about it and have more funding for this bureaucracy and do this and X, Y, Z. I don't think it's that complicated. For example, like we mentioned, you could literally just ban it. It's banned. We regulate child pornography. Why could we not just mirror the same with pornography? Certainly that would work as well as it does with child pornography. Of course, you can still access that type of material, but it's much harder to do, and there are penalties for doing so, which I was interviewed earlier about this. I wouldn't want to, penalize people who are viewing it because I do ultimately, as I'm sure you may sympathize with, view them to be victims, but there is something to be said about how effective our sort of security apparatus can be at regulating content if we decide that it's a threat to the national interest, which I think it is. And also, even in the case of just mandating the ID verification, Pornhub literally rage quit. They were like, okay, screw you, Arkansas, and they're not going to allow for their content to be in Arkansas anymore. So it can work either directly or indirectly, and I think that we just keep returning to this issue of, it's nuanced and complicated, but then you also said in the beginning of your answer that ultimately you don't even want to ban it. And I don't think that measuring people's self-perceived, well, maybe I have an addiction, maybe I don't believe they're reliable narrators. I certainly have known a few alcoholics who definitely do not think they have a problem. They're not reliable narrators because their lives have been compromised, and their brains and their minds and their souls have been compromised by the things to which they are addicted. And so I think looking at their behavior is much more important. So if 50% of young men are viewing pornography every day, I can stop anytime I want. Okay, well then do it. No, I don't want to. It's like, okay, well you might be addicted and also experiencing the symptoms of addiction. So I think it is very real, and you've got this situation where their brain is rewired to disregard things that impede its access to that hit of dopamine. And so if you ask them perhaps in a clear mind, are you addicted? They'll just be like, no. And also I think it may not even occur to people to have the thought that there are problems because if you're a guy, it's like very difficult to look at a naked woman and be like, I disagree with this. And so it's probably something to the effect of, it's not as obvious as something like doing crack or binge drinking. It's a much more pernicious type of addiction, I think. So I'd certainly be open to a national conversation, but what I fear is that it's a sort of pivot, like, well, let's talk about it, let's find out how we can regulate this. But then I think, and you might even agree with this, that if we were to do that, if Joe Biden came out, based Catholic Joe Biden, and said we're going to have a conversation about pornography at the national level, the left would probably be upset about that and say it's stigmatizing sex work and it's ultimately negative and pornography is good because MPD, something like that. And so I think it's sort of like a disingenuous kind of maneuver. So why don't you want to just ban it? Why don't you want to just regulate it the same way that we regulate child pornography?
Do I have a chance to rebut this?
You can do that after a question for him if you want to. I can also address the Q&A section if you want. So John, your next question is that some people have argued that banning pornography would drive a lot of people to do sex work underground, resulting in more crime and STDs. How can you be sure that banning pornography wouldn't create more problems?
I don't think that's true. I think that the problem we have is that it has become so democratized that the sort of accessibility that has become easy upon becoming no longer easy would dissuade people. For example, the art hoe who drops out to start doing OnlyFans, is she really going to try to get involved with some network or something if all of a sudden that's not possible, some underground network? I find that unlikely. I think that now where it's so simple and so glamorized, this idea of like women producing pornography of themselves or what have you, I think if that went away and that monetary incentive to either produce it yourself or to get involved with it or to produce it of other people, if that largely dried up, I don't think people would really go out of their way to do it the way that they may with something like abortion or something like what have you. So I'm not really so worried about that, the sort of underground black market. I think that we could largely account for that.
Fuck.
I got daddy, I'm looking so small.
But again, you've got material which is already regulated at a level that is harmful to people, directly exploits people. Pornography is the same, except the age is just different. Obviously, there's not the same sort of exploitation. There's something obviously worse about children. But in terms of how it's affecting people, the societal impact as a whole, the types of pornography that men are watching nowadays, and you look at the most popular categories, it's incest, you've got like furries, all sorts of bizarre stuff that would not occur naturally. I'm not really worried about what would happen if that goes away. Like all of a sudden you're still going to see a bunch of furries, a bunch of hentai advocates, what have you. I'm not going to tell that story. How much time do I have? Oh, I will tell that story. Last night, I was at the hotel bar, and this lady asked me, what I'm in town for, because I had my Detroit hat on. And I was like, oh, I'm debating pornography. And she was like, She was drunk at the hotel bar. She was a, what do they call this now? The high calorie. She was a high calorie woman. And she was yelling at me at the hotel bar. I was trying to have my hotel bar burger. And she was yelling at me about how she's bisexual and she loves animated porn and her IMDb account. And so like, I look at that person and I'm like, am I going to lose sleep if all of a sudden your ability to access that goes away? It's like, no, that's like my villain origin story actually, is you embarrassed me at the hotel bar. And so now I'm going to take away your like one source of pleasure with my cool friends. That's, anyways, so yeah, I'm ultimately like not that worried about it. Because if we can reduce the access by 50%, 60%, it's really like, that's achieving the win condition enough to where I'm going to be happy with it. It's not like we're trying to, I don't know, build a bridge that can reduce traffic by 30 minutes and then we only reduce it by 5.
Wow, we Skyped from Fireplace.
Minutes. It's like, if we can do something that's going to get young men off of this, make the issue more stigmatized, dissuade people from viewing it, from distributing it, from creating it, I think that's ultimately positive, regardless of whether people are so addicted that they choose to download VPNs and risk whatever VPN issues are existent with that. So, yeah.
All right. Brianna, you have 3 minutes to respond to that.
I'll address this one point super quickly, where I can't even touch the hentai thing, I'm sorry. Yeah, I do want to go back and talk about some of the other points I was talking about, so I'll leave that one alone. John, one of the things I think, this is where I think you don't understand, you're trading one bureaucracy for another, because I don't think you understand, I don't think you've thought through how this would actually work. Let me give you a really concrete example. So we spent $20 billion for one of our main agencies on basically drug control, basically helping people with addiction. I started asking how much of that $20 billion is actually going to people that are struggling with addiction. And no offense to my friend in the back who works in law enforcement, but only $2.43 of that was actually going towards addiction treatment, research, things like that. The rest of it was going to actually prosecute you. And the thing I think you haven't thought through is, if you're spending money directly towards rehab programs, building standards, that's something that makes sense to me. Even making halfway houses where people can live with accountability like they do with drug addiction. That makes sense to me. You were talking about creating a police state. So you can do this 2 ways. You can do it with civil penalties or you can do it with criminal penalties. I want all of y'all to think about our failed war on drugs. Now I can tell you, someone with 20 years of sobriety, I'm not that kind of liberal that's going to tell you to go out there and do heroin. It's not going to be a big deal. That's not my message. But I do think all of us can agree
That'd be
there's
pretty
a
fucked
lot,
up.
too much money putting people in jail and not enough treating people that have addiction issues, which is why drug courts are so fantastically successful. If you start thinking through this, you're going to have to work through the jurisprudence in every single one of these states. Those court cases are going to throw it into chaos. You're going to have to start creating new government bureaucracies, not just at the federal level, but every single state in the country for compliance. Every single tech company is going to have to go out there and create a compliance office to deal with this the same way that we did with GDPR. There are a bunch of young computer science people in the back that I was talking to before this started. Just wait until you graduate and you see how Europe's GDPR law affects how you have to run your containerized data. It's not going to be fun. So every single time you add on this issue, you are trading a bureaucracy for another. And I think there's a very realistic chance this could end up with a lot of people thrown in prison. That's not the America I want to live in. I do think this is a free speech issue.
Whoa. So you have this. Yeah, I was gonna say go for it. I'm thinking out of not your shit.
All right. We will now have the final question, which will be for Brianna. You have 5 minutes, and John will have 3 minutes to respond, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Some feminists have argued that the production of pornography is abusive to women, even with all the regulations that are on it right now. What do you say to feminists who would argue that banning pornography would save women from being harmed and abused by the porn industry?
Yeah, I think I'm not one of them. I am a sex-positive feminist. I personally believe that you can't have women's liberation without sexual liberation. At the same time, I do think this is a reasonable argument, and I think it's something that needs an answer. Yeah, I have a really good friend of mine, and she's a legend in advertising, and she's actually, she's doing a startup right now to try to create pornography that is more loving, is more female-centric, right? Because she thinks that a lot of this product is just, a lot of it can be rape fantasies and things like that. So I am certainly open to that argument, and I understand where they're coming from. It's one of these leftist issues that's ultimately at an academic symposium. No offense to the main faculty, people that may be in the audience tonight, but I think all the students, once you graduate, you're going to find out it's a little bit more complicated than the professors may be telling you it is. So the feminist argument, I understand it, but ultimately this is a free speech issue. Again, the price of free speech
Don't
in a
come
society
for
like
me,
America
bro.
is we have to deal with a lot of things we find personally distasteful. For me, because I'm a national security geek, one thing I'm really wrestling right now is information warfare. You have Russia and China, they don't hold our same ideals when it comes to freedom of speech and your ability to criticize the government. They are abusing the fact that we do believe that in America right now to flood Twitter and YouTube and Mastodon and every single social media site out there with a lot of fake accounts to gin up outrage and exacerbate divisions. I don't like that. But it is, I don't see how we could be America if we just threw all that away. So that would be my answer.
For more than a century, the products we design have been constrained by the capabilities of processes. Additive manufacturing fundamentally.
Okay, John, you have 3 minutes to respond to that.
I am definitely sympathetic to the arguments from our lovely young women, but I tend to focus more on the arguments that are affecting young men, more so because I view young men as the political force in the country, and I think that a lot of the complaints from women, while valid, are ultimately, I don't like this, I don't like that. And it's like, okay, like we got little Timmy over here, his brain is being rewired, and you're like, well, she's naked, I don't like that. And it's like, it's deeper, okay? We got more problems here to focus on than just it's degrading to women. So I'm sympathetic, I like those arguments, but I don't think that's where the core of the issue is. And I think that still, to respond to that, it's clearly possible to regulate. We regulate a lot of media in this country, particularly child pornography. Other countries regulate this type of material, and it can still be accessed, but not as easily as we have. And I mean, again, you have a situation where any person with a smartphone, children, can just pull this up on their phone at any time, and we're being told, well, to actually combat this issue is very complicated and will require a lot of money and bureaucracy and swiping things out. And it's like, okay, we're consulting this very sort of intimidating scenario that's trying to like cloud from the core of the issue, which is like, should we do this or should we not? We do a lot of things. We spend a lot of money, a lot of it's wasted, but we still at least try. And I still think that this country, when it puts its mind to it, is capable of doing things. And so why would we not do this? I mean, what else would we do instead? And also, in terms of creating a police state, I think that's absolutely unnecessary. There's not going to be, like we said, some scenario where we're going door knocking, raiding people's houses, looking for lewd material. If we can shut down the online and digital infrastructure to access this material at any point, like we have now, and like we've done with other material, that would pretty much do what we needed to do and achieve the win condition. In terms of people being thrown into prison, okay, like bye. Yeah, like I mean, if you're gonna, I don't want people who are viewing it to be thrown in prison, but if you are distributing it, manufacturing it, and contributing to what is societal illness, why would you not go to prison? Why would you not be punished for that? And I think ultimately in your response, you address the core of it, which is it's a free speech issue. I just don't think that's true. I think legally it might be classified that way, but ultimately it's a moral issue. I mean, to call it a free speech issue, it's like I'm looking at a T.S. Eliot novel and I'm looking at two people having sex on my computer. I'm like, wow, this is literally the same thing. Like, no, it's obviously not. It serves society in different ways. And of course, there are different precedents that exist on obscene material. We could ban this at the state level if we wanted to. Some states have worked towards that already. But the idea that there's some sort of merit to it, the same way there would be with us having this conversation tonight, or someone publishing a novel that's critical of the government, and sort of alluding to this idea that, well, if we ban one, it's a slippery slope, and we might ban the others. I just don't think that's true. And again, the founding fathers, like I mentioned, that constructed our legal framework, rooted in the English common law tradition, if they heard us tonight saying that they did all of this so that we could watch this type of material whenever we want, and it's all about free speech, they would have been appalled, and they probably would have had us hanged. And so I don't think that's a genuine argument. And I think also legal precedent, what does that even mean? Our court exists to interpret the Constitution. Roe v. Wade, legal precedent, not anymore. W us. So yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Let's give a round of applause for our debaters for this Q&A.
I had a question for Mr. Doyle. As a Catholic, who is your patron saint, and do you have any special devotions to other saints?
I believe, if I recall, St. Francis. You got to remember, this was like 2014. This was before I was truly Catholic. This was like, okay, Mom, I'll go to catechism every Monday. But in terms, don't laugh at me, all right? We've all been there. He's literally me. So true. I don't know. Maybe St. Elizabeth Ann. That's where I go to. Well, I should dox myself, but I suppose, yeah. If I had to compile a list, I suppose I should, but none immediately come to mind.
What's up, John? I'm actually giving an anti-porn speech on Wednesday for my speech class. Funny enough. Do you have any of your sources on the internet anywhere that I can find them? Or like?
Yeah, I've got a document that a very bright young man, I will not be able to pronounce his name, I think it's Chet Ayanu? Chetanu? We love Chetanu. He constructed a wonderful note document thing from that video with all the sources there. So if you send me an email,
this
I can
motherfucker.
send you that. And also, too, you guys are so lazy. Every time I put a little blip, all the sources are there. You Google it, it comes right up. You guys are lazy. You want the work done for you. Can you send me a document with all of it? You know how long it took me to drag all those there? And you can't carry the same cross? Yeah, I'll send it to you.
You ever go to Latin Mass? You Latin Mass Catholic?
Yeah, I appreciate, actually we did one of these in Georgia a month or so ago, and this dad told me that I had to get up at like 6 a.m. so he could take me to his parish and attend that service. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't want to do this, I'm trying to think of an excuse, but I was like, when a man says he's bringing you to his parish, if you say no, that makes you like, you should, yeah. So I went, and it was wonderful. That was, I think, the second or third that I've been to. I should go down in DFW. I know the parish that everyone says is the best one, but it's kind of far away, and I'll be honest, sometimes on Sunday morning it's tough to make that drive, so I typically attend those sort of.
Hi, Brianna. So recently MindGeek had removed 10 million videos, including child pornography, from Pornhub and their sister sites, despite publicly claiming that there was only 138 videos on there. And private investigations, like shown in Netflix's Money Shot, has shown there's still double to triple the amount of this content on their sites. So I would like to ask, how would anything other than a ban, such as the rehab or the loving porn that you mentioned tonight, do anything to solve this issue in and of itself?
So I think this is a very salient issue. Thank you for asking this. So I'm not completely up to date on all the porn companies. Is MindGeek, they're the ones that bought this particular site?
I'm fairly sure that that's the one one that
RedTube, and I
owns,
believe
yeah.
So Pornhub, as I recall,
I was gonna say
that is
Pornhub.
the-
I've seen a
is that the one
documentary
where
about it
upload stuff,
before.
That whole problem with deepfakes and people uploading other people's materials. Anyone can upload to that, correct?
I believe all three have the ability for anybody to
Right.
upload.
So, you know, this is, I would probably, John, I would hope you'd be able to join me on this. I think this particular model is terrible for 1,000 reasons. One of the things that big tech is doing, and this has all kinds of secondary effects for social media, for reporting scams on GoFundMe, is they've actually outsourced. They want to scale their ability to put out videos so quickly that they've just outsourced all the reporting and telling bad content over to you. So it's utterly unsurprising under this model that a ton of garbage like that is coming through. I think maybe the answer should be civil penalties for a place like their parent company, MindGeek, if they are hosting this garbage. Let's make it more expensive until it makes more sense for them to do compliance and be in, follow the law than to let this garbage on there.
I would like to say just one last thing.
Sure.
They do already require either a individual ID verification or a company verification for confirming age, and these companies do still buy.
Why would you have done that
But
instead
I
of
think that
taking
shows the
out
process
the?
isn't working. So let's make it a lot more expensive to F up like that.
Have you ever heard of an economy being taxed into prosperity? I haven't.
Hello, thank you guys both for being here. My question is for Brianna. So there are no more studies that are being done on men and their effects of watching pornography, and this is because, according to like the ethics board for the American Psychological Association, once the results of a study have been shown to have extremely detrimental effects and there's no way to reverse them, those studies are no longer allowed to continue. It has been proven that men who watch pornography objectify women. They do not, like, the areas of the brain that light up don't register them as human. And also over time, because of dopamine, the dopamine deficit, men watch increasingly violent forms of pornography, and this bleeds out into our everyday life. I think that John said that the issue affecting women was kind of trifling compared to men. I would argue that it is the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
And we have a society where women are being exploited and harmed, and where anecdotally girls getting into relationships are being asked to do increasingly degrading and harmful things. I would ask, how, as a feminist, are we able to justify this kind of behavior? It's more than an academic issue, but it's rather an issue that affects the safety of women and girls.
Yep, I hear you. Thank you for that great question. Please send me those studies after this panel. I would love to look at that. One of the problems I've found is I'm not very confident in the studies I have seen. I've seen some good meta-analyses, but this is a very difficult thing to research. I want to piggyback off something you said, which is I do think what's happening to girls is really, really not discussed enough. I want to share with everyone out there an issue I'm increasingly running into professionally. There was a stat that came out recently about the number of young women that are doing OnlyFans content. And I want to be clear, I'm a sex-positive feminist. If you want to make that choice, you can do it. But that doesn't mean I think it's a good choice necessarily. I've talked to so many young women that want to work in politics now for a congressional staffer. They want to go work for Microsoft or Apple. And they've got this in their past. And just to be frank with you, it's going to F up their entire career, right? And I've been asking myself, what are the reasons that so many more women are doing OnlyFans nowadays? I think part of it is economic, but I also think part of it's got to be Instagram. Like we've seen study after study of what Instagram is doing to young women and making them sexualize themselves. And I do think a lot of young women are like feeling this power from participating with that. I don't think that's good for America. I don't think it's good for society. And I think we need to be giving those women other ways to get self-esteem. I hope that answers your question.
I would just like to clarify that with the things I say on YouTube.com, I am trying to sell the points to a predominantly male audience. And I don't want to be the guy that's like, guys, Coach is right. We have to be nice to women and respect them, because then these guys aren't going to show up. They're going to look a simp, and then they're not going to think I'm cool. So I do have to kind of curate it to a predominantly male
And they're not
audience.
gonna
So
think
we'll
I'm
also
cool.
clarify, nobody has more respect for women than me, than the guys in this audience. And to prove that, after this event, we're going to MindGeek HQ, and we're going to make America great again. These people have names and addresses, and we're going to go get them. So rest assured, the problem will be solved. We'll take care of it. That's a by the way, that was a complete joke. I disavow all of that.
Good evening, both of you. Hope you enjoyed your stay in South Carolina, John. My question is for you. And you mentioned earlier kind of the effects that pornography has on the spiritual realm of men in particular. And I think that's a very important issue, because it seems that in our modern day, a lot of churches, a lot of mainline denomination churches, the pastors don't want to talk about pornography in church. They don't want to talk about issues affecting men more broadly. They don't want to talk about this stuff. And I think that kind of leads to a lot of men not knowing where to turn, and we turned it to your content, which I love. It's great stuff. But we should be able to turn to our pastors and our churches, or at least show up at church and hear it sermonized if it's such a major crisis. So I guess my question question is why is it the case that we don't hear that? And how can we get like pastors and churches talking about these issues again, like, engaging men and engaging these problems?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think in the sort of shorter timeline, you're probably just going to have to shop for a better parish. I remember when we moved down, my buddy and I to DFW, and we were sort of looking around, we had gone to reconciliation at one parish, and the priest, we were discussing sins of a more lustful nature, and he was just sort of like, yeah, I mean, that happens, and, well, sure, but we might need a little bit more insight and sort of spiritual guidance and mentorship if we're going to be having those kinds of conversations. So yes, in the short term, it does certainly have to be probably more sort of hands-on approach from you or for whomever in picking a parish that's better. But in the long term, I think that men just need to have more leadership within the church. I mean, every time I go to Mass, I see mothers and I see their children, and I see very few fathers. Sometimes I see them, but largely no. I mean, they'll help organize, you'll have the Knights of Columbus or what have you, but they just want to have a good time, and that's fine. It should be a social, communal environment, but if you're not guiding towards young men towards things that are better and more pure than that type of content, I mean, why are you even trying to build a church community in the first place? So I think it starts by being that guy and just sort of introducing that conversation into the ecosystem, and it's uncomfortable, and it's going to get a lot of lack of eye contact because 80% of you, I don't know about this audience, but national average, who knows about the church, but still, it's uncomfortable, but it ultimately does have to be addressed.
The person who does that usually goes really far, but they never win.
Good evening, all of you. I have two questions, one for each speaker here, and I would like to start my question with Mr. Lutz. And the beginning question is: do you think that as society progresses, that the pursuit of degrees in, say, college education, I'm talking not tech schools, four-year colleges specifically, do you think that that is a natural trend that is progressing into that's just our society is trending to, or is it just it is artificial? Because throughout my life, I've been told, go get a four-year degree. I would go pursue a four-year degree. I then was asked, what did you learn at your four-year college for 3 semesters? I could not respond with anything. I went to a tech school, and I've learned more in one night than 3 semesters at a four-year college.
I think it's a real crisis. I don't want your faculty members to feel disrespected. When I went to the University of Mississippi at first in 1996, I think I paid $3,000 that first semester. The most I ever paid to go to Ole Miss was $6,000 a semester. And it's a very different value proposition for the four-year degree than I think what y'all are facing. I saw one study the other day that, I'm trying to remember these numbers off the top of my head, but I believe it was $38,000 in debt that y'all are being introduced to. I do think that once you're a few more years down the road, you'll see the value of what the education was. It's not necessarily what your teacher said to you. It's going to be the things that you learned between classes, the friends you made, how to get along with people, the initiatives you took. But literally, I've hired 300-400 people across my career. I've never checked a college degree, ever. It's all about what you can do. So there it is.
For Mr. Doyle there, one question. I gotta be that guy. Excluding pornography, like, what do you look for in a woman? Boobs or butt?
Why did you ask me this question? Why did you ask? I am up here trying to set a good example, and you asked me a question.
I was excluding pornography because, as we know, men are more attracted to physical things.
Right.
Personality does contribute.
The thing is that I'm mad about isn't that you asked me the question, it's that I'm going to have to answer because there is actually something to be discussed here. So my sort of tinfoil hat on it. If you look at the history of Western civilization, artwork that depicts this sort of obscene content, which maybe we should ban, whatever, there is some artistic merit to it. There's always an emphasis on a woman's breasts as a sort of source of nourishment for young children, things of that nature. And I think that when you look at some more primitive sexual interests, it's much more focused on a woman's butt. And you look at a woman's breasts and it's like, okay, you can feed my children. Nice. It's more, indicative. It's more indicative of a capacity for good genetics. Whereas you look at women's butts, they're all going to the gym now, they're doing squats, and then your stupid monkey brain is like, oh my gosh, she has good genetics. No, she doesn't. She fakes that. That's a psyop. She went to the gym for that. That's not real. And you can say the same thing about breast implants, but you can usually not that, but you can usually tell those more than just in the case of the other part. So ultimately, I don't know. I think the society is trying to. And you look at this with pornography trends as well. A lot of guys are expressing this bizarre interest in sodomy. And you look at the polling on when they began to express those interests, it's like, I don't know, I was shown it on a pornography website, now all of a sudden I'm interested in that. I think that's completely perverted, completely unnatural. So I think that, look at the 1990s, for example. What was the big thing we had to do in the 1990s? Oh, I just gotta see a pair of boobs. Now it's completely inverted, and our society's crumbling as a result. So there's something to be said there, I think.
Whew, I feel real weird right now.
By the way, yeah.
All right, so Mr. Doyle, I have a question for you. In your opinion, what's the surefire way to ban all porn?
I don't even know if, and sometimes honestly I get criticized from the more traditional people about this, but I really would not necessarily be looking to ban all obscene material or all pornography. There's certainly an argument to be made that the way it existed in previous generations with your VHS tapes and your magazines has led to a more normalized society throughout society that has caused us to be where we are now, and I'm certainly sympathetic to that. But in terms of we're just trying to kind of stop the leak, I would certainly be more interested in trying to just get it off the internet, and I think that we certainly can do that. Other countries have done it, and their people tend to be a little bit more ambitious and well-adjusted than our people in many cases, so I think it's certainly possible. But in terms of how to go about actually banning all of it, I mean, again, these apparatuses exist in a way to regulate this sort of content, and And there could be monetary incentives for reporting people who are creating these networks of black market distribution. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. My intention here tonight is not to sit down and create a policy platform. It was more to normalize my position within the years of the fine people here. So it certainly can be done. I mean, the government can pretty much do whatever it wants. I mean, we've done things that are far more complicated than this. This is very new. I mean, we went to the moon, again, convinced people we did. Either of those, very impressive. So I think that we could solve this issue if we really put our minds to it, but people don't because they like it themselves. They ultimately view it as positive because it weakens the spirit of young men, or they just are addicted to it themselves. So, yeah.
Hey, Mr. Doyle, I'm going to reiterate that question because you said absolutely nothing there. How do you plan to legislate this? Because there's every solution you posited in this speech, VPNs, doing the same thing you do as child porn, is absolutely ridiculous. So I just want to re-ask the question.
It's the regulated way we regulate child porn.
So here's my first thing I'm going to ask you is how would we market things outside of the U.S.? How would we ban those? Would we condemn every single site? Would we condemn every single site?
Sure.
Why not? Because the amount of money that we require, it's absolutely insane. I don't think
it's insane. I think what is insane is the idea that you have a constitutional right to masturbate to material as like a 9-year-old that you find on the internet. And I'm being told by you, and I'm being told by you that it's just this very complicated policy matter. How would you go about this? I have yet to hear, should we at least try? And then it's like, well, no, it's a free speech issue. So it's like you're trying to pivot and sort of be disingenuous because ultimately you don't feel a problem with this material in itself. It's not like you're one of our guys and you're like, okay, but this is going to be a really tough task. It's, well, I don't agree in the first place, but also, how would you even do this? Because politics is so complicated. I acknowledge you can have a VPN, you can get around it, but 90%, 80% in terms of like cumulative reduction in the consumption of this material, I'm sure that's positive or possible. And if it's being circumvented by 10, 20% of the population, that's no skin off my back. I mean, that's them. I'm concerned about the general well-being of the population. I think we absolutely have the infrastructure and intelligence to regulate that responsibly.
Back when I first became owner of Mint Mobile, I promised one of our first and longest-running customers, Wasim Ignabi, that I'd make it even.
Should we talk about
I can respond to that very quickly. And just to think through his example, though. So this is a really good point about how much pornography is made outside the United States. So we're going to have, if we could get enough consent, like public support for your position, which the polls I saw, 80% of Americans don't agree with you, so good luck with that. But now we're talking about creating a government agency to go through and look at every single porn site out there and whitelisting it or blacklisting it, and then opening up for people to civil or criminal liability for that. Like, the more you think through this, it's not just that it's a bad idea and anti-American, it doesn't make sense.
I don't think it's pro-American to have this sort of material. Also, you mentioned the sort of public consensus. I agree. They are hypnotized by this material. So the organized minority must come in and ban it for their well-being. And also, too, if you look at studies that have shown decades of public opinion polling versus what actually translates into public policy, as I'm sure you're well aware, Washington is not actually working for people. What the people want tends to not be what actually happens with issues that maybe you would agree are better for us anyway. So I think it's absolutely possible. And in terms of it being more complicated, creating a whole new bureaucracy, I'm sure the DHS could do it. I'm sure the FCC could do it. Again, I'm not here to come up with policies. Maybe that would be a good video. But the idea, should it be banned in the first place? That's really what we're talking about. And if you agree that the issue is affecting our children severely, it's affecting the collapse of the family structure, people feeling isolated, depressed, if you agree with that, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to at least move in that direction as opposed to create this artificial barrier so complicated and nuanced. Probably what they thought about, like creating an interstate highway system too, but we did that. And so I think that it's not actually as nuanced and complicated as it's being portrayed as.
It's just a difference in tactic. I want to tackle the problems directly themselves. You want to address the secondary effect and hope that it addresses the primary effect. It's just a difference of tactic.
I don't think that's true at all.
I think people can make their own assessment.
Hey, so my question is for Mrs. Brianna over here. When is Revolution 62 going to be coming out, and what stage of development is it at currently?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, when I decided to run for office and then started working running a super PAC in this cycle for the Democratic Party, I'm hoping I can raise $5 to $10 million. So that takes a lot of my time. That is my focus and not game development. I genuinely hope at one point the United States and our democracy is not on fire. Yeah, I can get back to game development because it's a more fun job than running a super PAC. So thank you for asking.
My question is for Ms. Lewis. I found the questions about how harmful pornography can be to women as somewhat unsatisfactory, considering how sex trafficking is so prevalent in pornography and how it's very hard to, like, if you were regular, as you have said, it would be hard to crack down on that. Specifically, I was also wondering is your idea of how rape has skyrocketed as because of pornography, as several rapists have gone on record as saying the rape fantasies started with pornography. I also not certain, but I believe that John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy also started with rape fantasies and pornography.
Let's take that one at a time. So before the rape, you were talking about sex trafficking, correct? So if there are better steps out there, I would welcome, John, even if you want to email me this after this is over, I started trying to find the link between sex trafficking and the number of people that have been sex trafficked actually working in pornography. It's really hard to find these studies. So I think for the sake of this argument, let's agree it exists. Let's agree it's a really serious problem. From what I was able to see with the FBI funding that we are allocating towards sex trafficking, it is not at the level it needs to be. I personally think that a lot of the attacks we've seen on the FBI over the last few years, these political attacks, have made it really hard for the people that work there to pursue things like sex trafficking. I've worked with the FBI on many occasions. When I ran for office, Russia hacked my email server, and I got to see how much better they were today than they were during Gamergate at fighting like hacking attempts and things like that. It was night and day. So what I would say is rather than trying to attack a secondary effect, let's dedicate more money for law enforcement to go ruthlessly hunt down sex traffickers, throw them in jail, figure out where they're coming into the country, all that stuff. The reason that's more difficult is because of cam girls and because that's such a bigger thing, and they don't have to be in the United States for that anymore. So, you know, that's my answer for that. The last thing you said was talking about rape skyrocketing. It's true that not many rapes are being prosecuted and resulting in criminal convictions. The last number I looked at was only 2%. But this, again, is because of law enforcement. Violent crime overall is actually going down. People don't realize that. So if we're serious about rape, I think we need a national program to actually go through and process rape kits, right? We do need more police officers that are trained in the special tools that you need to prosecute these cases. That's what I want to do. Thank you.
So like relax, I'm spilling these rats as long as you feel them to the day that I drop. You'll never say that I'm not.
Available now. Buy the Vault Edition and get access to exclusive content.
PlayStation. Fellas, leave the wax strips, razors, and tweezers to the professionals.
Manscaped created the perfect tool specifically designed for this area.
Super important to pick the right tools for the job.
Of course, the Lawnmower 4.0. You know, this is what started it all.
My favorite method for getting the job done.
Will make quick work of any unwanted hair.
With their skin-safe technology, you can shave with confidence and reduce the chances of any mishaps in the process.
There's no terminals on here, so it's waterproof. You can actually use this in the shower. Really sweet.
Recently, Manscaped added the Beard Hedger beard trimmer.
Whether you like a 5 o'clock shadow or a full-on lion's mane, you can choose from 20 different lengths with using the zoom wheel that uses only one guard.
You can go all the way 0.5 millimeters. That's this.
Look, bro, if you're trying to be like some high-level hotshot Mr. Top G guy, you can't be walking around here looking like you got spiders crawling out of your nose.
The Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer.
It comes with skin-safe technology. It's cordless, rechargeable, and it has a battery with up to 45 minutes of runtime.
Only a nerd would know that. Wait, babe, what are you doing?
Sorry, he just uses a better nose trimmer.
3 of their major products out right now.
Come on now. Look good, feel good, right? And do so with Manscaped because they'll take care of you.
Get the right tools for the job. Shop manscaped.com.
For Mr. Doyle, asking primarily as a fellow Christian and also as a side note as a fan of yours, does watching porn fall under more of lust or idolatry, and is it the most spiritually damaging form of either that you can do to yourself?
To the second part, yes. To the first part, I'd probably say lust. I would certainly be interested in the argument for idolatry, but yeah, I'd probably say lust.
For Mrs. Wu, you, during the argument, during the debate, you referred to yourself as a sex-positive feminist. You also many times agreed with John, and I commend you for doing so, on the negative effects of pornography, and then later during the Q&A, you reiterated the negative effects of pornography for women, mostly resulting from porn-addled men seeking the wrong things in relationships. If you then define sex-positive feminism as supporting the right of women to self-produce pornography, the same pornography that leads to these problems in men and therefore women, how can you be supporting women, or how can you hold that position without holding it at the cost of the mental, physical, and spiritual well-being of men and by extent women?
So I want to make sure I understand your question so I can answer. So you have a contention with the definition of sex-positive feminist because you think that because there are these secondary effects we're talking about that are harmful for women, that it's not possible for sex-positive feminism to exist, or am I misunderstanding your point?
Well, you said explicitly earlier that you support the right of women as a sex-positive feminist to produce, say, OnlyFans content.
Sure.
I don't think you went as far as to recommend it, but you said you said you support the right.
That's right.
So you're supporting the right for the creation of the thing that's causing these problems that we've been talking about.
That's right.
For the duration of the evening. And I'm not. You could get into I don't support the problems. I support this. But how can you, if she's producing porn, a guy's watching it and it's ruining his life in most cases. That's inseparable. So how can you hold that position without holding it at the expense of men's well-being and eventually, when they start dating and just seeking sexual gratification, women's well-being?
Sure. So there are two components. Thank you for that question. It's a very thoughtful question. There are two components of this that I think if you look around the world and you look at societies that tend to really clamp down on women's sexual expression, generally speaking, directionally, overall, those societies don't tend to be great places for women to live. It's harder for them to work, harder for them to be treated with dignity. Just not great overall. So I think that the Western value of being more okay with sexual expression, I think this is overall a better frame of mind. Doesn't mean I think there are no problems whatsoever, but I think sex-positive feminism is one that makes more sense. But it's completely fair. Many feminists disagree on this. So to the second part of this, I actually don't think, and I'm sorry, John, I don't agree with you on this. I don't think that pornography necessarily ruins men's lives, every single man's life that watches this. If you want to respond to this after I get done, I'd love to hear it. You had one quote that really struck me, where you said there are only two kinds of men, ones that are currently addicted to pornography and ones that will be addicted to pornography. I don't think that's true. I really don't. I think there are probably a lot of people in the audience that have a healthy relationship with this. More directionally, we've seen study after study talking how masturbation is actually good and normal and healthy. These are studies that came out when I was a teenager in the 90s, and they were very, people talked a lot about that back then. So I don't really agree with that assessment, but if I'm missing something, please let me know. Do you want to respond at all?
Sure. The addiction quote, if I recall correctly,
is right here.
That there are, well, you misquoted it because there's a subcategory in the second category. There are something to the effect of there are two kinds of men. You've got men who are not addicted to pornography, and then men who are addicted to pornography. Yeah. And then you've got within that category men who don't realize it and men who do realize it.
Yeah.
So the point there is to say any man who is watching pornography regularly because of the way that it affects his brain will over time become addicted to it. And that's why we know 80% of men are viewing it at least once a week, 50% are viewing it every day. If we observe their behavior, are we really supposed to say these men aren't addicted, they just have to do it like every day?
Yeah. But don't you think it's like, for me, I'm sure a lot of people after this is over, y'all are going to go have a drink at a bar. You can do that normally. I just can't go with it. Like, there's something about me where if I start drinking or doing drugs, I can't stop, right? That's me. It's my personal responsibility to be aware of that and not put myself in those situations. I think this is the same with a lot of men, that maybe they don't have that gene or that proclivity.
I think the difference would be that with something like alcohol or cigarettes or any kind of addiction like that, you can make a more conscious choice, whereas when you see pornography or you hear about pornography, it brings back, like a lot of addicts, for example, will say that even just the smell of alcohol triggers them. Well, the sight of a woman on TikTok or Instagram or anywhere, I mean, our advertisements, our culture is so just pornographic in general that can be very triggering to men in a way that would be similar to that.
There we
in
go.
terms of it being good and healthy, I don't think that's right. I've seen a lot, it can reduce prostate cancer or something, and we found out that study was garbage data, and then we found out it's like can relieve stress, maybe temporarily, but you look at the baseline levels of stress as measured by the stress hormones of those men, those are actually elevated because of the feelings of depression and anxiety. So it might be natural in the sense that, chimpanzees jerk off, but they only do that in captivity, right? And so what does that say about the psyche of...
All right.
men nowadays, where they feel like they have to just compulsively masturbate?